The first whispers of the Tyranid threat emerged from the void-touched margins of the eastern fringe during the closing centuries of the 41st millennium. Imperial monitoring stations, positioned along the galaxy's edge, began detecting anomalous readings, massive biosignatures moving through the intergalactic gulf at impossible speeds. These initial contacts were dismissed by many as sensor ghosts or the dying echoes of ancient stellar phenomena. The Imperium's attention remained focused inward, consumed by the endless grind of maintaining control over a million worlds while battling the familiar threats of chaos, orcs, and rebellious human populations. The first documented encounter with Tyranid organisms occurred on the mining world of Tyran Prime, a modest Imperial outpost situated on the galaxy's eastern periphery. The planet's astropathic communications ceased abruptly during what should have been routine monthly reports. When the Imperial Navy dispatched a reconnaissance vessel to investigate, they discovered a world stripped bare of all organic matter. The mining facilities stood intact but empty, their metal structures gleaming like skeletal remains against barren rock. No human remains were found, not even bones or clothing. The planet's entire biosphere had vanished as if it had never existed. The reconnaissance team's initial reports described finding strange, chitinous fragments scattered across the planet's surface. These organic remnants displayed properties unlike anything in Imperial xenobiological databases. The fragments were incredibly dense yet lightweight, exhibiting a cellular structure that seemed to shift and adapt even in death. Most disturbing were the reports of psychic resonance emanating from these remains, a cold, alien hunger that caused several crew members to experience violent nightmares and waking visions of endless consumption. Similar incidents began occurring across a dozen worlds along the eastern fringe. Each followed an identical pattern: complete loss of communication, followed by the discovery of planets stripped of all biological matter. The Imperial response was initially fragmented, with local sector commands treating each incident as an isolated phenomenon. Some attributed the disappearances to new orc raiding patterns, while others suspected chaos cultist activity or previously unknown Xenos raiders. The true scope of the threat became apparent when massive bioships began appearing on long-range auger arrays. These vessels defied conventional understanding of spacecraft construction, appearing as living organisms rather than manufactured constructs. The ship's hulls pulsed with organic rhythms, and their surfaces were covered in what appeared to be sensory organs and feeding appendages. Imperial Navy vessels attempting to intercept these bioships reported weapons that fired living projectiles and defensive systems that adapted to incoming fire patterns. The emergence of Hive Fleet Behemoth marked the beginning of the Imperium's true understanding of the Tyranid threat. This massive swarm of bioships entered the galaxy's edge with a coordination and purpose that spoke of a guiding intelligence far beyond simple animal instinct. The fleet's approach vector aimed directly at the Ultramar system, home to the Ultramarines chapter and one of the Imperium's most prosperous regions. Hive Fleet Behemoth's assault on the Ultramar system began with the systematic consumption of outer system worlds. The Tyranids demonstrated tactical sophistication that caught Imperial defenders off guard. Rather than launching direct assaults, the bioships would establish orbital positions around target worlds and begin seeding the atmosphere with spore-like organisms. These spores would germinate into various bioforms that would begin the process of planetary consumption from within. The fall of Tyran itself became a defining moment in Imperial understanding of the Tyranid threat. The world's defenders, consisting of local PDF forces and a company of Ultramarines, initially believed they faced a conventional Xenos invasion. The first waves of Tyranid ground forces appeared to be standard assault troops, albeit with disturbing biological characteristics. However, as the battle progressed, Imperial forces discovered they were fighting an enemy that adapted to their tactics in real time. Tyranid bioforms demonstrated the ability to rapidly evolve countermeasures to Imperial weapons and strategies. Creatures that had been vulnerable to lasgun fire in the morning would display chitinous armor plating by evening. Bioforms that had initially shown simple pack hunting behaviors began exhibiting complex tactical coordination as the battle continued. Most unsettling was the discovery that fallen Tyranid organisms were being consumed by their own kind, their genetic material apparently being recycled and improved upon. The planet's final hours were marked by the appearance of massive biotitans, creatures the size of Imperial war machines, but composed entirely of living tissue. These monstrosities demonstrated firepower equivalent to heavy artillery while displaying the mobility and adaptability of living organisms. The Ultramarines' defensive positions, carefully constructed according to established tactical doctrine, proved inadequate against enemies that could literally evolve past their defenses. The evacuation of Tyran's surviving population became a desperate rearguard action. Imperial forces discovered that the Tyranids were not simply killing their enemies, but systematically harvesting all biological matter. Captured civilians were being processed through massive organic structures that broke down their bodies at the molecular level. The psychological impact on Imperial forces was devastating. They were fighting an enemy that viewed them not as opponents, but as raw material. Imperial attempts to classify these new xenos initially relied on existing taxonomic frameworks. Early reports described the creatures as biomechanical constructs, or living weapons, terms that failed to capture the true nature of the threat. The organisms displayed characteristics that challenged fundamental assumptions about the relationship between technology and biology. They were clearly artificial in the sense of being designed for specific purposes, yet they were undeniably alive and capable of independent evolution. Magos Biologis Locard of the Adeptus Mechanicus became the first Imperial scientist to recognize the true nature of the threat. His analysis of captured Tyranid organisms revealed that they were not simply advanced bioforms, but components of a vast, interconnected biological system. Each creature, from the smallest drone to the largest biotitan, shared identical genetic markers that suggested they were all part of a single, galaxy-spanning organism. Locard's research, conducted under extremely hazardous conditions aboard a research station in the Ultramar system, revealed that Tyranid organisms possessed a form of biological communication that operated on both chemical and psychic levels. Individual creatures were linked through a network of synaptic nodes that allowed for instantaneous coordination across vast distances. This discovery explained the Tyranids' ability to adapt so rapidly to Imperial tactics. They were not learning as individuals, but as components of a collective intelligence. The coining of the term Tyranid by Magos Biologis Locard represented more than simple nomenclature. His classification system attempted to categorize the various bioforms according to their apparent functions within the larger organism. He identified warrior strains designed for combat, worker strains optimized for resource gathering, and synapse creatures that served as nodes in the collective consciousness. This functional approach to classification proved far more useful than traditional taxonomic methods. The Ordo Xenos of the Imperial Inquisition became involved in Tyranid research following the fall of several outer system worlds. Inquisitor Kryptman, who would later become the foremost Imperial authority on the Tyranid threat, began coordinating intelligence gathering efforts across multiple sectors. His initial reports to the Inquisition High Command described the Tyranids as representing an existential threat to humanity, unlike any previously encountered. The Death Watch, the chamber militant of the Ordo Xenos, played a crucial role in gathering tactical intelligence on Tyranid bioforms and capabilities. Their specialized kill teams were uniquely equipped to engage Tyranid organisms in close combat and retrieve samples for analysis. These operations were extremely hazardous, as Tyranid bioforms demonstrated the ability to adapt to Deathwatch tactics and equipment with disturbing speed. Deathwatch Battle Brothers reported that standard anti-Xenos protocols were largely ineffective against Tyranid organisms. The creature's biological nature made them immune to many toxins and viral agents that had proven effective against other Xenos species. Their rapid adaptation meant that weapons and tactics that worked in one engagement might prove useless in the next. Most concerning was the discovery that Tyranid organisms appeared to retain genetic memories of previous encounters, suggesting that the entire species was learning from each engagement. The intelligence gathered by the Death Watch revealed the existence of specialized Tyranid bioforms designed specifically for combat against different types of opponents. Some creatures displayed characteristics optimized for fighting heavily armored targets, while others seemed designed to counter fast-moving enemies or psychic opponents. This suggested that the Tyranids possessed detailed knowledge of Imperial military capabilities and had developed countermeasures accordingly. The psychic aspects of the Tyranid threat became apparent through the experiences of Imperial psychers during early encounters. Astropaths reported experiencing overwhelming sensations of hunger and consumption when attempting to send messages from worlds under Tyranid attack. Some described visions of a vast, alien intelligence that regarded all other life as nothing more than food. These psychic phenomena suggested that the Tyranids possessed their own form of warp-based communication and coordination. The shadow in the warp, as this phenomenon came to be known, represented one of the most disturbing aspects of the Tyranid threat. Imperial psychers found their abilities severely compromised in the presence of large Tyranid forces. Astropathic communication became impossible, navigator abilities were impaired, and even basic psychic talents were suppressed. This psychic interference had profound implications for Imperial military operations, as it effectively blinded Imperial forces to the movements and intentions of Tyranid fleets. The initial Imperial response to the Tyranid threat was hampered by the Imperium's bureaucratic structure and institutional inertia. Local commanders struggled to convince higher authorities of the severity of the threat, while established military doctrines proved inadequate against an enemy that could adapt faster than Imperial forces could develop new strategies. The loss of reliable astropathic communication in affected regions further complicated coordination efforts. The Ultramarines chapter, under the leadership of Marnius Calgar, began developing new tactical doctrines specifically designed to counter Tyranid bioforms. These tactics emphasized mobility, concentrated firepower, and the rapid destruction of synapse creatures to disrupt Tyranid coordination. However, early implementations of these tactics met with mixed success, as the Tyranids continued to demonstrate their ability to adapt to new Imperial strategies. The economic impact of the Tyranid invasion became apparent as entire sectors were cut off from Imperial supply lines. Worlds that had previously contributed to the Imperium's vast logistical network were either consumed or isolated by the shadow in the warp. The loss of these resources, combined with the massive military expenditures required to combat the Tyranid threat, began to strain the Imperium's already overstretched economy. The arrival of Hive Fleet Behemoth marked the beginning of a new era in Imperial military thinking. The threat posed by the Tyranids was unlike anything the Imperium had faced before, not a rebellion to be crushed, a heresy to be purged, or a rival empire to be conquered, but a force of nature that sought to consume everything in its path. The implications of this threat would reshape Imperial strategy and doctrine for generations to come. The biological architecture of Tyranid organisms represents a fundamental departure from conventional xenobiology. Where other species evolved through natural selection over millions of years, Tyranid bioforms demonstrate characteristics that can only be described as engineered perfection. Each creature serves as a living component within a vast biological machine, its physiology precisely tailored to fulfill specific functions within the greater organism. The chitinous exoskeleton that encases most Tyranid bioforms provides the foundation for this remarkable biological engineering. Tyranid chitin differs substantially from the protective shells found in naturally evolved arthropods. Imperial xenobiologists have identified at least 17 distinct variants of Tyranid chitinous material, each displaying unique properties suited to different battlefield roles. The basic structure consists of overlapping plates that can flex and articulate with remarkable precision while maintaining structural integrity under extreme stress. These plates are not simply grown, but actively secreted by specialized glands located beneath the creature's skin, allowing for continuous repair and modification of the exoskeleton during the organism's lifetime. The most remarkable aspect of Tyranid chitin lies in its adaptive properties. Bioforms exposed to specific types of damage demonstrate the ability to modify their chitinous armor in real time, developing resistance to previously effective weapons. Imperial forces have documented instances where Tyranid warriors struck by lasgun fire began secreting additional chitinous layers within hours, creating ablative armor specifically designed to disperse energy-based attacks. This adaptive response operates independently of the creature's conscious control, suggesting that the modification process is hardwired into the organism's basic biological functions. Beneath the chitinous exterior, Tyranid physiology operates on principles that challenge Imperial understanding of biological systems. The creatures possess multiple redundant organ systems that allow them to continue functioning even after sustaining massive trauma. A typical Tyranid warrior possesses 3 hearts, each capable of maintaining circulation independently. The digestive system consists of multiple stomach chambers that can process virtually any organic material, from plant matter to the complex proteins found in human tissue. Most disturbing to Imperial researchers is the discovery that these digestive systems can break down and analyze the genetic material of consumed organisms, extracting useful traits for potential integration into future bioforms. The nervous system of Tyranid organisms represents perhaps their most alien characteristic. Rather than relying on a centralized brain structure, Tyranid bioforms possess distributed neural networks that extend throughout their bodies. Nerve clusters located in the creature's limbs, torso, and even chitinous plates can process information and coordinate responses independently. This distributed intelligence allows Tyranid organisms to continue fighting effectively even after suffering what would be fatal head trauma to conventional life forms. Synaptic creatures occupy a unique position within Tyranid biology, serving as living conduits for the Hive Mind's influence. These specialized bioforms possess enlarged neural structures that can process and transmit the complex psychic emanations generated by the collective consciousness. The most commonly encountered synaptic creatures include Tyranid warriors, whose enlarged craniums house sophisticated bioneural processors capable of coordinating entire swarms of lesser bioforms. These creatures emit a constant stream of psychic commands that reach nearby organisms through specialized receptor organs located throughout their nervous systems. The relationship between synaptic creatures and the broader Tyranid swarm operates on multiple levels simultaneously. At the most basic level, synaptic creatures provide direct neural control over nearby bioforms, overriding their individual instincts and coordinating their actions according to the Hive Mind's strategic objectives. However, the connection extends beyond simple command and control. Synaptic creatures also serve as biological relay stations, amplifying and retransmitting psychic signals across vast distances. This creates a layered communication network that allows the Hive Mind to maintain control over billions of organisms spread across multiple star systems. The psychic emanations generated by synaptic creatures operate on frequencies that exist partially within the warp while remaining anchored in real space. This dual nature allows Tyranid psychic communication to function at faster than light speeds while avoiding the chaotic influences that typically affect warp-based phenomena. Imperial psychers attempting to intercept these communications describe experiencing overwhelming sensations of hunger and predatory focus, suggesting that the Tyranid psychic network carries emotional and instinctual information alongside tactical data. Bioplasma serves as the fundamental energy source for Tyranid organisms, functioning as both fuel and building material for their biological systems. This viscous, protein-rich fluid circulates through specialized vessels that parallel the creature's conventional circulatory system. Bioplasma carries more than simple nutrients. It contains complex organic compounds that can be rapidly reconfigured to support different biological functions. During periods of intense activity, Tyranid organisms can redirect bioplasma flow to enhance specific capabilities, temporarily increasing muscle density for greater strength or accelerating neural processing for improved reaction times. The production of bioplasma occurs within specialized organs called bioreactors, which break down consumed organic matter at the molecular level. These organs can process virtually any carbon-based material, from vegetation to the complex proteins found in sentient beings. The efficiency of this process approaches theoretical maximums, with less than 2% of consumed matter being expelled as waste. The remaining material is converted into bioplasma or used to construct new cellular structures, allowing Tyranid organisms to grow and adapt throughout their lifespans. Genetic absorption represents one of the most disturbing aspects of Tyranid biology. When Tyranid organisms consume other life forms, specialized enzymes within their digestive systems isolate and analyze the victim's genetic material. Useful traits identified during this process are cataloged and transmitted to the hive mind through the synaptic network. This information becomes part of the collective genetic database that informs the creation of new bioforms. The process is not random. The hive mind demonstrates sophisticated understanding of genetic engineering principles, selecting and combining traits to create organisms optimized for specific battlefield roles. The speed at which genetic absorption occurs varies depending on the complexity of the consumed organism and the specific traits being analyzed. Simple characteristics such as improved muscle density or enhanced sensory organs can be integrated into new bioforms within a single generation. More complex traits, such as the ability to process specific toxins or resist particular forms of energy, may require multiple generations of refinement before they can be successfully incorporated into the Tyranid genome. The hive mind's ability to coordinate genetic absorption across multiple bioforms creates a form of directed evolution that operates on timescales measured in hours rather than millennia. When Imperial forces deploy new weapons or tactics against Tyranid swarms, the collective consciousness can rapidly develop and deploy countermeasures by drawing upon its vast genetic database. This process has been observed repeatedly during extended campaigns, where Tyranid bioforms demonstrate increasingly sophisticated adaptations to Imperial military technology. The synaptic network that connects individual Tyranid organisms to the hive mind operates through a combination of biological and psychic mechanisms. Each bioform possesses specialized neural structures called synaptic nodes that can both receive and transmit psychic emanations. These nodes are distributed throughout the creature's nervous system, creating multiple redundant pathways for psychic communication. The density and sophistication of these nodes varies according to the organism's role within the swarm, with simple bioforms possessing only basic receptor capabilities, while synaptic creatures house complex transmission arrays. The psychic emanations that flow through the synaptic network carry multiple layers of information simultaneously. Basic command structures provide immediate tactical instructions, while deeper levels contain strategic objectives and long-term planning data. The most fundamental layer carries the hive mind's essential drives and motivations, ensuring that all bioforms remain focused on the primary objective of consumption and expansion. This multi-layered communication system allows the hive mind to maintain precise control over individual organisms while simultaneously coordinating the actions of entire fleets. The range and effectiveness of synaptic communication depends on the presence of specialized relay creatures within the swarm. These bioforms possess enhanced psychic capabilities that allow them to amplify and retransmit signals across greater distances. The loss of these relay creatures can cause significant disruption to Tyranid coordination, as isolated bioforms revert to basic instinctual behaviors without the guiding influence of the hive mind. Imperial forces have learned to prioritize the destruction of these synaptic creatures, though the Tyranids have responded by developing more resilient communication networks and deploying redundant relay systems. Tyranid reproductive cycles operate on principles that blur the distinction between individual reproduction and industrial manufacturing. Rather than traditional mating behaviors, Tyranid reproduction occurs within specialized biostructures called spawning pools. These massive organic factories consume raw biological material and use it to construct new bioforms according to genetic templates provided by the hive mind. The process begins with the collection of biomass from consumed organisms, which is broken down into its component molecules within digestion pools. The digestion pools serve as the first stage in the reproductive process, where complex organic compounds are reduced to their basic chemical components. These pools contain powerful enzymatic solutions that can break down virtually any biological material, from simple plant matter to the sophisticated neural tissue of sentient beings. The resulting chemical soup is then transferred to recombination pools, where genetic material is sorted and analyzed according to the hive mind's requirements. Recombination pools represent the heart of Tyranid reproductive technology. Within these structures, genetic material is combined and modified to create new bioforms optimized for specific functions. The process is guided by the collective genetic knowledge accumulated by the hive mind through countless acts of consumption and absorption. New bioforms are not simply grown, but engineered, with every aspect of their physiology carefully designed to fulfill their intended role within the swarm. The creation of new bioforms within recombination pools follows a precise sequence of biological events. Genetic templates are first constructed using information stored within the hive mind's collective memory. These templates specify every aspect of the new organism's physiology, from its basic body structure to the specialized organs required for its intended function. The actual construction process begins with the formation of a basic cellular matrix, which is then modified and enhanced according to the genetic template. The speed of bioform creation within spawning pools varies according to the complexity of the organism being produced. Simple bioforms such as termagants can be created in a matter of hours, while more sophisticated creatures like Tyranid warriors may require several days of careful construction. The most complex bioforms, including the massive biotitans that serve as living siege engines, can take weeks to complete and require vast quantities of biological material to construct. The spawning pools themselves represent remarkable examples of biological engineering. These structures are not simply grown, but actively constructed by specialized worker bioforms that shape and modify the organic material according to precise specifications. The pools are equipped with sophisticated monitoring systems that can analyze the quality of incoming biomass and adjust the production process accordingly. Temperature, chemical composition, and genetic purity are all carefully controlled to ensure optimal conditions for bioform creation. The hive mind represents the most profound and terrifying aspect of the Tyranid threat, functioning as a gestalt psychic entity that transcends conventional understanding of consciousness and intelligence. This collective awareness emerges from the combined psychic emanations of countless billions of Tyranid organisms, creating a singular intelligence that spans entire star systems. Unlike the chaotic and unpredictable nature of most warp-based phenomena, the hive mind demonstrates a cold, calculating intelligence focused entirely on the consumption and assimilation of all biological matter within the galaxy. The relationship between the hive mind and the warp operates on principles that challenge Imperial understanding of psychic phenomena. While the collective consciousness generates massive psychic emanations that interact with the Imperium, these emanations remain fundamentally different from the chaotic energies typically associated with warp-based entities. The hive mind's psychic presence creates a distinct impression within the warp, manifesting as an overwhelming sensation of hunger and predatory focus that extends far beyond the physical boundaries of Tyranid fleets. Imperial psychers who have encountered the hive mind's influence describe experiencing visions of an alien intelligence that views all other life as nothing more than raw material for consumption. These encounters leave lasting psychological scars, as the sheer alienness of the hive mind's thought patterns proves fundamentally incompatible with human consciousness. The collective entity does not think in terms of individual survival or territorial expansion, but rather as a single organism seeking to consume and incorporate all available biological resources. The psychic emanations generated by the hive mind operate on multiple frequencies simultaneously, creating a complex communication network that allows instantaneous coordination across vast distances. These emanations carry tactical information, strategic objectives, and the fundamental drives that motivate all Tyranid organisms. The network functions as both a command structure and a sensory system, allowing the hive mind to perceive events occurring throughout its domain while simultaneously directing the actions of individual bioforms. The density and intensity of the hive mind's psychic presence varies according to the concentration of Tyranid organisms in a given area. Small scouting forces generate relatively weak emanations that can be detected by sensitive psychers at short range, while massive hive fleets create psychic disturbances that can be felt across entire sectors. The approach of a major Tyranid force is often preceded by reports of disturbing dreams and psychic phenomena among the local population, as the hive mind's influence begins to affect susceptible individuals long before the physical arrival of the swarm. Synaptic creatures serve as the primary nodes within the hive mind's communication network, functioning as living relay stations that amplify and retransmit psychic signals across the swarm. These specialized bioforms possess enlarged neural structures that can process the complex psychic emanations generated by the collective consciousness, while simultaneously maintaining control over nearby organisms. The most commonly encountered synaptic creatures include Tyranid warriors, whose distinctive elongated skulls house sophisticated bio-neural processors capable of coordinating entire broods of lesser bioforms. The neural architecture of synaptic creatures differs significantly from that of standard Tyranid organisms. While ordinary bioforms possess distributed nervous systems that allow for basic autonomous function, synaptic creatures feature centralized brain structures that can interface directly with the hive mind's psychic emanations. These enlarged neural organs are protected by thick chitinous plates and surrounded by specialized tissue that can channel and focus psychic energy with remarkable precision. The psychic capabilities of synaptic creatures extend beyond simple communication and coordination. These bioforms can project localized psychic fields that enhance the combat effectiveness of nearby organisms, accelerating their reflexes and improving their tactical awareness. The range of these enhancement fields varies according to the specific synaptic creature involved, with more sophisticated bioforms capable of affecting larger numbers of organisms across greater distances. The loss of synaptic creatures within a Tyranid swarm creates immediate and observable effects on the surrounding bioforms. Organisms that had been operating with perfect coordination suddenly become disorganized and confused, reverting to basic instinctual behaviors without the guiding influence of the hive mind. This phenomenon has been extensively documented by Imperial forces, who have learned to prioritize the destruction of synaptic creatures as a primary tactical objective during engagements with Tyranid forces. The hive mind's ability to maintain control over its constituent organisms depends on the presence of multiple overlapping psychic networks within each swarm. Primary synaptic creatures provide the main communication pathways, while secondary nodes ensure redundancy and backup communication capabilities. This layered approach to psychic communication creates a resilient network that can continue functioning even after suffering significant casualties among its synaptic elements. The shadow in the warp represents one of the most devastating aspects of the Tyranid threat, manifesting as a psychic phenomenon that disrupts and suppresses warp-based abilities across vast regions of space. This effect emerges from the combined psychic emanations of massive Tyranid forces, creating a localized disturbance within the Imperium that interferes with conventional psychic phenomena. The shadow grows stronger as more Tyranid organisms enter a region, eventually reaching levels that can completely suppress psychic abilities across entire star systems. Imperial psychers experience the shadow in the warp as an overwhelming sensation of alien hunger that drowns out their ability to access the Imperium. Astropaths find their telepathic abilities severely compromised, with long-range communication becoming impossible and even basic psychic talents requiring enormous effort to maintain. The psychological effects of prolonged exposure to the shadow include persistent nightmares, anxiety, and in severe cases, complete psychic breakdown as the human mind struggles to process the alien nature of the hive mind's influence. The impact of the shadow in the warp extends far beyond its effects on individual psychers. Imperial military operations rely heavily on astropathic communication for coordination between different forces, and the disruption of these communication networks can cripple entire campaigns. Naval operations become particularly vulnerable, as navigators find their ability to perceive the astronomicans severely impaired, making warp travel extremely hazardous or impossible within affected regions. The shadow in the warp also affects the manifestation of chaos-related phenomena, as the hive mind's psychic presence creates interference patterns that disrupt the activities of demons and other warp entities. This has led to documented cases where chaos forces have found themselves unable to summon demonic reinforcements or maintain psychic abilities in regions heavily infested with Tyranid organisms. The implications of this phenomenon suggest that the hive mind's psychic nature may be fundamentally incompatible with the chaotic energies of the warp. The range and intensity of the shadow in the warp varies according to the size and composition of the Tyranid force generating it. Small infiltration forces create localized disturbances that affect only the most sensitive psychers, while massive hive fleets can project the shadow across multiple star systems. The phenomenon appears to be cumulative, with the psychic emanations of individual bioforms combining to create effects far greater than the sum of their parts. Imperial researchers have identified several distinct phases in the development of the shadow in the warp as Tyranid forces approach a target system. The initial phase manifests as subtle psychic disturbances that cause unease among psychers and disturbing dreams in the general population. As the Tyranid presence grows stronger, these effects intensify, leading to the complete suppression of astropathic communication and the breakdown of warp-based navigation systems. The final phase occurs when massive Tyranid forces enter a system, creating such intense psychic interference that even the most powerful psychers become completely unable to access their abilities. The hive mind's psychic influence operates through specialized bio-neural networks that extend throughout each Tyranid organism. These networks consist of modified nerve tissue that can both generate and receive psychic emanations, creating a biological communication system that operates partially within the warp while remaining anchored in real space. The networks are most highly developed in synaptic creatures, which possess dedicated psychic organs capable of processing complex command structures and strategic information. The psychic emanations transmitted through these bio-neural networks carry multiple layers of information simultaneously. Basic command protocols provide immediate tactical instructions to individual bioforms, while deeper levels contain strategic objectives and long-term planning data. The most fundamental layer carries the hive mind's essential drives and motivations, ensuring that all organisms remain focused on the primary objective of consumption and expansion, regardless of local conditions or tactical setbacks. The redundancy built into the hive mind's communication networks ensures that the loss of individual synaptic creatures does not completely sever the connection between the collective consciousness and its constituent organisms. Secondary and tertiary communication pathways can maintain basic coordination even after the destruction of primary synaptic nodes, though the effectiveness of these backup systems diminishes rapidly as more synaptic creatures are eliminated from the swarm. Instinctive behavior patterns emerge when Tyranid organisms become severed from the hive mind's direct control, either through the destruction of nearby synaptic creatures or interference with the psychic networks that maintain their connection to the collective consciousness. These behaviors represent the baseline programming that allows individual bioforms to continue functioning independently when they cannot receive direct commands from the hive mind. The specific nature of instinctive behavior varies according to the type of bioform involved and the circumstances that led to its disconnection from the hive mind. Warrior strain organisms typically revert to aggressive hunting behaviors, seeking out and attacking the nearest potential threats or sources of biomass. Worker strain bioforms may continue performing their designated functions, but lose the ability to coordinate effectively with other organisms or adapt to changing conditions. The duration of instinctive behavior depends on several factors, including the strength of the bioform's connection to the hive mind before disconnection and the proximity of other synaptic creatures that might reestablish communication. Some organisms can maintain autonomous function for hours or even days, while others quickly become disoriented and ineffective without constant psychic guidance from the collective consciousness. The study of instinctive behavior has provided Imperial researchers with valuable insights into the fundamental nature of Tyranid psychology and motivation. Observations of disconnected bioforms reveal that the basic drives programmed into each organism focus entirely on survival, consumption, and the location of other Tyranid organisms. These behaviors suggest that individual bioforms possess limited capacity for independent thought or decision-making, functioning primarily as specialized components within the larger biological machine controlled by the hive mind. The hive mind's ability to rapidly reestablish control over disconnected bioforms demonstrates the sophisticated nature of its psychic communication systems. When synaptic creatures move within range of isolated organisms, the reconnection process occurs almost instantaneously, with the affected bioforms immediately resuming coordinated behavior patterns. This rapid reintegration suggests that the basic neural pathways required for psychic communication remain intact even when the connection to the hive mind is temporarily severed. The implications of instinctive behavior for Imperial military strategy have been extensively studied by the Death Watch and other specialized anti-Tyranid forces. The temporary disruption of Tyranid coordination through the targeted elimination of synaptic creatures has become a standard tactical approach, though the effectiveness of this strategy depends on the ability to maintain pressure on isolated bioforms before they can be reintegrated into the swarm's command structure. The vast diversity of Tyranid bioforms represents the hive mind's approach to biological warfare, with each organism serving as a specialized component within the greater swarm. These creatures are not evolved through natural selection, but engineered for specific battlefield roles, their physiology carefully crafted to maximize effectiveness within the collective's strategic framework. The hierarchical structure of Tyranid forces reflects this purposeful design, with lesser bioforms providing numerical superiority and basic combat capabilities, while more sophisticated organisms fulfill specialized functions that require enhanced intelligence and adaptability. Termagants form the backbone of most Tyranid ground assaults, serving as the primary infantry component in swarm formations. These bipedal creatures stand approximately human height, but possess a distinctly alien physiology that marks them as products of the hive mind's biological engineering. Their elongated skulls house basic neural structures that allow for limited autonomous function, while remaining completely dependent on synaptic creatures for tactical coordination. The termagant's four-limbed body structure provides excellent stability and mobility across varied terrain, with powerful digitigrade legs that can propel the creature at surprising speeds during assault operations. The chitinous carapace that protects termagants displays the characteristic purple and bone coloration common to many Tyranid bioforms, though variations in pigmentation occur based on the specific hive fleet and environmental conditions encountered during their creation. This natural armor provides adequate protection against small arms fire, while remaining flexible enough to allow for rapid movement and precise manipulation of their bioweapons. The carapace segments overlap in a manner that permits full articulation of the creature's limbs while maintaining structural integrity under combat stress. Termagants possess specialized bioweapon symbiotes that have been integrated into their physiology during the spawning process. The most commonly encountered variant carries a flesh borer, a living weapon that fires beetle-like projectiles capable of boring through standard Imperial armor. These projectiles are actually small organisms that are bred within specialized organs located in the termagant's torso, with mature beetles being fed into the weapon's firing chamber through internal biological conduits. The flesh borer itself represents a remarkable example of bioengineering, featuring a chitinous barrel that can regulate projectile velocity and a targeting system that interfaces directly with the termagant's nervous system. The symbiotic relationship between termagants and their bioweapons extends beyond simple tool use. The creatures can actually influence the behavior of their projectiles through chemical signals, causing the beetle rounds to seek out specific target types or alter their penetration characteristics based on the nature of the opposition encountered. This adaptive ammunition system allows termagants to engage different enemy types with varying degrees of effectiveness, though the basic limitations of their simple neural architecture prevent them from making sophisticated tactical decisions without guidance from synaptic creatures. Hormogaunts represent the Hive Mind's approach to shock assault troops, engineered specifically for rapid movement and close-quarters combat. These creatures share the basic body plan of termagants, but display significant physiological modifications that optimize them for their specialized role. The most obvious difference lies in their limb structure, with Hormogaunts possessing 4 arms that terminate in razor-sharp scything talons capable of shredding through flesh and light armor with equal ease. Their legs have been modified to provide enhanced speed and agility, allowing them to cover ground rapidly while maintaining the ability to leap over obstacles or scale vertical surfaces. The neural architecture of Hormogaunts reflects their role as assault troops, with enhanced reflexes and improved coordination systems that allow them to function effectively in the chaotic environment of close combat. While still dependent on synaptic creatures for strategic guidance, Hormogaunts possess more sophisticated combat instincts than their termagant cousins, enabling them to adapt their fighting style to different opponents and terrain conditions. This enhanced autonomy comes at the cost of reduced tactical flexibility, as Hormogaunts are optimized for direct assault and prove less effective in defensive or support roles. The scything talons that serve as the Hormogaunts' primary weapons are not simple bone or chitin growths, but sophisticated biomechanical structures that can maintain their cutting edge through continuous regeneration. Specialized cells located at the base of each talon constantly produce new material to replace sections worn away through combat use, ensuring that the weapons remain sharp and effective throughout extended engagements. The talons themselves are composed of a dense chitinous material that rivals the hardness of ceramite, while maintaining the flexibility required for precise manipulation. Hormogaunt swarm tactics rely on overwhelming enemy positions through sheer numbers and speed, with large groups of these creatures advancing in coordinated waves that can quickly overrun defensive positions. Their enhanced mobility allows them to exploit gaps in enemy lines and engage defenders in close combat where their natural weapons prove most effective. The psychological impact of facing a charging horde of Hormogaunts cannot be understated, as their inhuman appearance and predatory behavior often causes panic among inexperienced Imperial forces. Gargoyles serve as the Tyranid swarm's primary aerial reconnaissance and harassment force, combining the mobility of flight with the offensive capabilities of ranged bioweapons. These creatures possess membranous wings that span several meters when fully extended, supported by hollow bone structures that provide the necessary strength while minimizing weight. The wing membranes themselves are living tissue that can rapidly heal minor damage and adjust their configuration to optimize flight performance under different atmospheric conditions. The body structure of gargoyles reflects their dual nature as both flying creatures and combat organisms. Their torso houses the same basic organ systems found in other Tyranid bioforms, including multiple hearts, redundant digestive systems, and the neural networks required for connection to the hive mind. However, these systems have been modified to account for the metabolic demands of powered flight, with enhanced cardiovascular systems that can deliver oxygen and nutrients to flight muscles at the accelerated rates required for sustained aerial operations. Gargoyles carry flesh-borer symbiotes similar to those used by termagants, though these weapons have been modified for aerial combat applications. The firing mechanism includes stabilization systems that compensate for the movement and vibration associated with flight, while the targeting systems have been enhanced to track ground-based targets from varying altitudes and angles. The creatures can engage in both diving attacks and sustained harassment fire, using their mobility to avoid return fire while maintaining pressure on enemy positions. The tactical role of gargoyles extends beyond simple combat operations to include reconnaissance and communication functions. Their aerial perspective allows them to observe enemy movements and positions that would be invisible to ground-based bioforms, while their connection to the synaptic network enables them to relay this information to other elements of the swarm. This intelligence-gathering capability makes gargoyles valuable assets during the initial phases of planetary invasions, when the hive mind requires detailed information about enemy deployments and defensive preparations. Tyranid warriors represent the primary command and control element within Tyranid ground forces, serving as the essential link between the hive mind's strategic consciousness and the tactical execution of its plans. These imposing creatures stand significantly taller than human soldiers, with their distinctive elongated skulls housing the sophisticated neural structures required for synaptic function. The enlarged cranium contains bio-neural processors that can receive, interpret, and retransmit the complex psychic emanations generated by the hive mind, while simultaneously maintaining direct control over nearby lesser bioforms. The physical capabilities of Tyranid warriors far exceed those of basic bioforms, reflecting their dual role as both commanders and combatants. Their forearms provide them with exceptional versatility in combat, allowing them to wield multiple bioweapons simultaneously or engage in close combat with devastating effectiveness. The upper pair of arms typically carries ranged bioweapons, while the lower arms are equipped with close combat implements such as bone swords or lash whips. This multi-limbed configuration enables warriors to maintain effective firepower while advancing into close combat, making them formidable opponents at all engagement ranges. The chitinous carapace that protects Tyranid warriors displays significantly greater thickness and complexity than that found on lesser bioforms. Multiple layers of overlapping plates provide enhanced protection against heavy weapons, while specialized segments around the enlarged skull offer additional protection for the creature's vital neural structures. The carapace coloration often includes distinctive markings that may indicate the specific hive fleet or the creature's role within the swarm hierarchy, though these patterns remain largely incomprehensible to Imperial observers. Tyranid warriors possess access to a wide variety of bioweapon configurations, allowing them to adapt their loadout to specific tactical requirements. The Deathspitter serves as a common primary weapon, firing corrosive projectiles that can dissolve armor and flesh with equal effectiveness. The weapon's organic nature allows it to produce ammunition continuously, drawing raw materials from the warrior's own biological systems and converting them into the complex chemical compounds required for the corrosive projectiles. More specialized variants include the venom cannon, which fires larger projectiles containing potent biological toxins, and the barbed strangler, which launches entangling organisms designed to immobilize enemy forces. The synaptic capabilities of Tyranid warriors extend beyond simple command and control functions to include battlefield coordination and tactical adaptation. These creatures can analyze enemy tactics in real time and adjust their own forces' responses accordingly, drawing upon the collective tactical knowledge stored within the hive mind. This adaptive capability allows warrior-led formations to counter enemy strategies more effectively than forces composed entirely of lesser bioforms, though the effectiveness of this adaptation depends on the continued survival of the synaptic creatures themselves. Ravenous represent the hive mind's approach to rapid assault and tunnel warfare, engineered for high-speed movement through both surface, terrain, and underground environments. These serpentine creatures possess elongated bodies supported by multiple pairs of limbs, allowing them to achieve remarkable speeds while maintaining the ability to navigate complex three-dimensional environments. Their distinctive burrowing capabilities enable them to approach enemy positions undetected, emerging from underground tunnels to strike at vulnerable targets before disappearing back into their subterranean network. The physiological adaptations that enable raven tunnel warfare include specialized digging claws that can penetrate most soil and rock types, reinforced cranial structures that protect the creature's brain during high-speed underground movement, and enhanced sensory organs that allow navigation in complete darkness. The creature's elongated body contains multiple redundant organ systems that can continue functioning even if portions of the organism are damaged or severed, a crucial adaptation for creatures that frequently engage in high-risk assault operations. Ravenous typically operate in small groups called broods, using coordinated tunnel networks to approach enemy positions from multiple directions simultaneously. Their ability to move rapidly through underground environments allows them to bypass defensive positions and strike at command centers, supply depots, and other high-value targets located behind enemy lines. The psychological impact of Ravena attacks often exceeds their direct military effectiveness, as the sudden appearance of these creatures from underground can cause panic and confusion among defending forces. The combat capabilities of Ravenas focus primarily on close-quarters engagement, with their primary weapons consisting of razor-sharp talons and powerful jaws capable of crushing armor and bone. Some variants carry ranged bioweapons that allow them to engage targets at medium range, though their primary tactical role remains that of shock assault troops designed to disrupt enemy formations and eliminate key personnel. The speed and agility of these creatures makes them difficult targets for conventional weapons, particularly in the confined spaces where they typically operate. Lictors serve as the Hive Mind's premier infiltration and assassination specialists, engineered for stealth operations and the elimination of high-value targets. These creatures possess sophisticated chameleonic abilities that allow them to blend seamlessly with their surroundings, becoming virtually invisible to both visual and electronic detection systems. The chameleonic capability operates through specialized cells in the creature's skin that can alter their coloration and texture to match the surrounding environment, while additional adaptations minimize the creature's thermal and electromagnetic signatures. The hunting capabilities of lictors extend far beyond simple camouflage, incorporating enhanced sensory systems that allow them to track prey across vast distances and through complex environments. Their olfactory organs can detect and analyze chemical traces left by potential targets, while specialized neural structures can process and interpret this information to predict the target's likely movements and behavior patterns. This combination of stealth and tracking abilities makes lictors exceptionally effective at locating and eliminating specific individuals, particularly commanders and other high-value personnel. The physical structure of lictors reflects their role as solitary hunters, with enhanced musculature that provides exceptional strength and agility while maintaining the lean profile necessary for stealth operations. Their 6 limbs include 4 arms equipped with razor-sharp talons and 2 legs that provide remarkable jumping ability and silent movement. The creature's elongated skull houses an enlarged brain that can process complex tactical information independently, allowing lictors to operate effectively without direct synaptic support from other bioforms. Lictors possess specialized bioweapons designed for assassination and close-quarters combat, including flesh hooks that can be fired at targets to drag them within reach of the creature's talons. These weapons operate silently and leave minimal evidence of their use, making them ideal for covert operations, where the discovery of Tyranid involvement must be delayed or prevented entirely. The creature's natural weapons include toxin-coated talons that can deliver paralytic or lethal compounds directly into the target's bloodstream, ensuring rapid and efficient elimination of designated prey. The intelligence-gathering capabilities of lictors make them valuable assets during the preliminary phases of Tyranid invasions, when the Hive Mind requires detailed information about enemy capabilities and defensive preparations. These creatures can infiltrate enemy installations, observe military exercises, and even eliminate key personnel without revealing their presence, providing the collective consciousness with crucial intelligence that informs subsequent invasion planning. The information gathered by lictors is transmitted to the hive mind through specialized pheromone trails that can be detected and interpreted by other Tyranid organisms. Carnifexes represent the hive mind's approach to heavy assault and siege warfare, functioning as living battering rams capable of breaking through even the most formidable defensive positions. These massive creatures combine tremendous physical strength with sophisticated bioweapon systems, creating mobile platforms that can deliver devastating firepower while advancing directly into enemy positions. The sheer size and presence of a Carnifex on the battlefield often proves as psychologically devastating as its actual combat capabilities, as few Imperial forces are prepared to face such massive biomechanical constructs. The basic physiology of Carnifexes reflects their role as assault creatures, with massively reinforced skeletal structures that can support their enormous bulk while providing anchor points for the powerful musculature required for their devastating charges. Their thick chitinous carapace provides exceptional protection against all but the heaviest weapons, while specialized segments around vital organs offer additional defensive capabilities. The creature's forearms allow for tremendous versatility in weapon configuration, with different loadouts optimized for specific battlefield roles. The bioweapon systems integrated into Carnifex physiology represent some of the most sophisticated examples of Tyranid bioengineering. The venom cannon fires large projectiles containing potent biological toxins that can incapacitate or kill entire squads of enemy troops, while the heavy venom cannon delivers even more devastating payloads capable of destroying light vehicles and fortifications. The barbed strangler launches web-like organisms that can entangle and immobilize enemy forces, making them vulnerable to follow-up attacks by other bioforms. Carnifexes demonstrate remarkable adaptability in their weapon configurations, with different variants optimized for specific tactical roles. The Screamer Killer variant focuses on close combat capabilities, using enhanced talons and crushing claws to destroy enemy vehicles and fortifications through direct physical assault. The Thornback variant carries specialized bioweapons designed for long-range fire support, allowing it to engage enemy positions from considerable distances while remaining protected by its heavy armor. The battlefield role of Carnifexes extends beyond simple assault operations to include siege warfare and the destruction of heavily fortified positions. Their ability to absorb tremendous amounts of damage while continuing to advance makes them ideal for breaking through enemy defensive lines, while their integrated bioweapons provide the firepower necessary to suppress defending forces during the approach. The psychological impact of facing a charging Carnifex cannot be understated, as the sight of such a massive creature advancing through defensive fire often causes panic among inexperienced troops. Trigons serve as the hive mind's primary deep strike assault troops, combining massive size with sophisticated tunneling capabilities that allow them to approach enemy positions through underground routes. These enormous serpentine creatures can burrow through virtually any terrain, creating tunnel networks that other bioforms can use for rapid deployment behind enemy lines. The sudden appearance of a Trigon emerging from underground represents one of the most terrifying experiences that Imperial forces can encounter, as few defensive positions are designed to counter attacks from directly below. The physiological adaptations that enable Trigon tunneling operations include specialized boring organs that can dissolve rock and soil through the application of powerful acids, reinforced cranial structures that protect the creature's brain during high-speed underground movement, and enhanced sensory systems that allow navigation through complex subterranean environments. The creature's massive size requires tremendous metabolic support, with multiple redundant organ systems that can continue functioning even under the extreme physical stress of rapid tunneling operations. The combat capabilities of Trigons focus on devastating close-quarters assault, with their primary weapons consisting of massive scything talons capable of shredding through armor and flesh with equal ease. The creature's enormous jaws can crush vehicles and fortifications, while its powerful tail can sweep away entire squads of enemy troops. Some variants carry bioelectric discharge organs that can generate devastating electrical attacks, making them effective against both organic and mechanical targets. The tunnel networks created by Trigons serve multiple tactical purposes beyond simple transportation, functioning as supply routes, communication conduits, and defensive positions that can be used by other bioforms. The tunnels themselves are reinforced with secreted chitinous materials that prevent collapse and provide structural support for extended use. This underground infrastructure becomes a permanent asset that the Hive Mind can exploit throughout extended campaigns, allowing for rapid redeployment of forces and the establishment of hidden supply caches. Molochs represent a specialized variant of the Trigon genus, optimized for ambush tactics and the elimination of specific high-value targets. These creatures possess enhanced stealth capabilities that allow them to remain hidden underground for extended periods, emerging only when optimal targets present themselves. The sudden appearance of a Moloch directly beneath enemy positions creates devastating psychological and tactical effects, as few commanders are prepared to counter attacks that originate from directly below their forces. The hunting behavior of Molochs demonstrates sophisticated tactical awareness, with these creatures capable of tracking enemy movements through seismic vibrations and other environmental cues. They can remain motionless underground for hours or even days, waiting for the perfect moment to strike at vulnerable targets. This patience and tactical discipline reflects the enhanced neural capabilities that distinguish Molochs from their more aggressive Trigon cousins, though both creatures share the same basic physiological adaptations for underground warfare. The specialized bioweapons carried by Molochs include powerful acid sprays that can dissolve armor and flesh instantly, making them exceptionally effective against heavily armored targets. The creature's massive jaws contain specialized grinding organs that can process consumed material rapidly, allowing the Moloch to feed efficiently during brief surface appearances before returning to its underground hiding places. This feeding behavior provides the creature with the energy reserves necessary for extended underground operations. Biovores function as the Hive Mind's primary artillery support, providing long-range fire support through the deployment of specialized ammunition organisms called spore mines. These creatures combine the mobility of living organisms with the tactical capabilities of conventional artillery, creating weapons platforms that can adapt their fire patterns to changing battlefield conditions. The symbiotic relationship between biovores and their spore mine ammunition represents one of the most sophisticated examples of Tyranid bio-weapon integration. The physiological structure of biovores reflects their role as artillery creatures, with enlarged torso sections that house the specialized organs required for spore mine production and deployment. These organs can manufacture different types of spore mines optimized for specific tactical situations, ranging from standard explosive variants to specialized types designed to counter specific enemy capabilities. The production process requires significant metabolic resources, limiting the rate at which biovores can generate ammunition and requiring careful tactical management of their deployment. Spore mines themselves represent remarkable examples of biological engineering, functioning as autonomous organisms capable of independent movement and target acquisition. These spherical creatures can float through the air using specialized gas bladders, while simple neural structures allow them to recognize and approach potential targets. Upon contact with enemy forces, spore mines detonate with devastating effect, releasing clouds of toxic spores or explosive compounds that can eliminate entire squads of enemy troops. The tactical deployment of biovores requires careful coordination with other elements of the Tyranid swarm, as their effectiveness depends on accurate targeting information and protection from enemy counter-battery fire. These creatures typically operate from concealed positions behind the main battle line, using their extended range to engage enemy positions without exposing themselves to direct retaliation. The indirect nature of their fire makes them particularly effective against enemy forces in cover or fortified positions that would be difficult for direct fire weapons to engage. Pyrovores serve as specialized assault troops designed to clear enemy fortifications and eliminate troops in confined spaces through the application of devastating biochemical weapons. These creatures possess specialized glands that can produce and project various corrosive and incendiary compounds, making them exceptionally effective in siege warfare and urban combat environments. The psychological impact of facing pyrovore attacks often exceeds their direct military effectiveness, as few soldiers are prepared to face weapons that can dissolve armor and flesh with equal ease. The bioweapon systems integrated into pyrovore physiology include specialized projection organs that can deliver their chemical payloads with remarkable accuracy and range. The creatures can produce different types of chemical compounds optimized for specific tactical situations, including acids that can dissolve metal and stone, incendiary compounds that can ignite flammable materials, and toxic substances that can incapacitate or kill enemy troops through inhalation or skin contact. The production of these compounds requires significant metabolic resources, limiting the sustained fire capabilities of individual pyrovores. The defensive capabilities of pyrovores reflect their role as assault troops, with reinforced chitinous armor that provides protection against small arms fire and shrapnel. Their relatively compact size allows them to navigate through confined spaces and urban environments where larger bioforms would be unable to operate effectively. The creature's enhanced regenerative capabilities allow them to recover from minor injuries rapidly, ensuring that they can continue functioning throughout extended assault operations. The psychic capabilities of zoanthropes operate on principles fundamentally different from human psychers, drawing their power directly from the hive mind's collective consciousness, rather than accessing the chaotic energies of the warp. This connection allows them to generate devastating psychic attacks without the risk of demonic possession or other warp-related hazards that plague Imperial psychers. The most commonly observed psychic attack manifests as focused bioelectrical discharges that can overload electronic systems and cause catastrophic damage to enemy vehicles and equipment. Hive Tyrants stand as the ultimate expression of Tyranid biological engineering, serving as the primary command organisms for major swarm formations and embodying the hive mind's strategic intelligence in physical form. These towering creatures combine massive physical presence with sophisticated neural architecture, creating bioforms capable of coordinating entire planetary invasions while personally leading assault operations. The distinctive crown-like crest that adorns the Hive Tyrant's enlarged skull serves both as protection for vital neural structures and as a symbol of the creature's authority within the swarm hierarchy. The physical dimensions of a Hive Tyrant dwarf those of lesser bioforms, with specimens typically standing 4 meters in height and possessing a proportionally massive frame that can support the creature's enhanced musculature and internal organ systems. The creature's forearms provide exceptional versatility in combat, allowing it to wield multiple bioweapons simultaneously while maintaining the ability to engage in devastating close-quarters combat. The upper pair of arms typically carries the most sophisticated bioweapons available to the swarm, while the lower arms are equipped with specialized close combat implements designed to crush armor and bone with equal effectiveness. The chitinous carapace that protects Hive Tyrants represents the most advanced form of biological armor found among Tyranid organisms. Multiple layers of overlapping plates provide exceptional protection against heavy weapons, while specialized segments around the enlarged cranium offer additional shielding for the creature's vital neural structures. The carapace displays distinctive coloration patterns that vary according to the specific hive fleet, with some specimens exhibiting adaptive camouflage capabilities that allow them to blend with their surroundings during tactical operations. The synaptic capabilities of Hive Tyrants far exceed those of lesser command organisms, with their enlarged neural structures capable of processing and coordinating the activities of thousands of bioforms simultaneously. The creature's connection to the hive mind operates on multiple levels, allowing it to receive strategic directives from the collective consciousness while maintaining tactical autonomy over local operations. This dual nature enables Hive Tyrants to adapt rapidly to changing battlefield conditions while ensuring that their actions remain aligned with the swarm's overall strategic objectives. Hive Tyrants possess access to the most sophisticated bioweapon systems available to the Tyranid swarm, with their weapon configurations typically customized according to specific tactical requirements and battlefield conditions. The heavy venom cannon serves as a common primary weapon, firing massive projectiles containing potent biological toxins that can eliminate entire squads of enemy troops or disable light vehicles. The weapon's organic nature allows it to produce ammunition continuously, drawing raw materials from the tyrant's own biological systems and converting them into the complex chemical compounds required for the toxic projectiles. The Stranglethorn cannon represents another sophisticated bioweapon option, launching web-like organisms that can entangle and immobilize enemy forces across wide areas. These projectiles are actually living creatures that continue to grow and spread after impact, creating expanding zones of difficult terrain that can channel enemy movement and create tactical advantages for advancing Tyranid forces. The psychological impact of these weapons often exceeds their direct military effectiveness, as few Imperial soldiers are prepared to face ammunition that continues to move and grow after being fired. The close combat capabilities of Hive Tyrants focus on devastating melee weapons that can crush the heaviest armor and slice through reinforced structures with equal ease. Bone swords serve as the most common close combat weapons, featuring razor-sharp edges that can maintain their cutting ability through continuous biological regeneration. These weapons are not simple bone growths, but sophisticated biomechanical constructs that can channel the creature's psychic energy to enhance their cutting power and penetration capabilities. Lash whips provide Hive Tyrants with extended reach in close combat, allowing them to strike at enemies beyond the range of conventional melee weapons, while maintaining the ability to entangle and manipulate targets. The whips themselves are living extensions of the creature's nervous system, providing tactile feedback that allows for precise control and manipulation of captured prey. The psychological impact of being grasped by a Hive Tyrant's lash whip cannot be understated, as the organic nature of the weapon creates a visceral horror that often causes panic among enemy forces. The intelligence levels displayed by Hive Tyrants approach those of the most sophisticated human commanders, with their enhanced neural architecture allowing for complex tactical planning and strategic analysis. These creatures can assess battlefield conditions in real time, identify enemy weaknesses, and develop countermeasures to Imperial tactics with remarkable speed and accuracy. The collective knowledge of the Hive Mind provides them with access to tactical information gathered from countless previous engagements, allowing them to anticipate enemy actions and prepare appropriate responses. The battlefield presence of a Hive Tyrant extends beyond simple command and control functions to include direct combat leadership that inspires nearby bioforms to greater levels of aggression and coordination. The creature's psychic emanations enhance the combat effectiveness of surrounding organisms, accelerating their reflexes and improving their tactical awareness. This leadership effect creates a zone of enhanced performance around each Hive Tyrant, making formations led by these creatures significantly more dangerous than those commanded by lesser synaptic organisms. The Swarmlord represents the ultimate evolution of the Hive Tyrant concept, serving as the Hive Mind's most perfect creation and the embodiment of its accumulated tactical knowledge. This unique organism transcends the normal limitations of individual bioforms, functioning as a direct avatar of the collective consciousness that can manifest repeatedly across different battlefields and campaigns. The Swarmlord's distinctive appearance marks it as fundamentally different from standard Hive Tyrants, with its four arms each wielding identical bone sabers that have become the creature's signature weapons. The recurring manifestations of the Swarmlord across multiple Hive fleet encounters demonstrate the Hive Mind's ability to preserve and transfer consciousness between different physical forms. When the creature's current body is destroyed, the collective consciousness retains all tactical knowledge and combat experience gained during that manifestation, incorporating this information into future incarnations. This continuity of experience allows the Swarmlord to learn from each engagement and become increasingly effective against Imperial forces over time. The bone sabers wielded by the Swarmlord represent the pinnacle of Tyranid bioweapon engineering, combining razor-sharp cutting edges with sophisticated psychic enhancement capabilities. These weapons can slice through the heaviest armor with minimal effort while channeling the creature's psychic energy to deliver devastating attacks that can disable vehicles and fortifications. The sabers themselves are living extensions of the Swarmlord's nervous system, providing perfect balance and control that allows for combat techniques impossible with conventional weapons. The tactical genius displayed by the Swarmlord has been documented across numerous engagements with Imperial forces, with the creature demonstrating an ability to analyze and counter enemy strategies with unprecedented speed and accuracy. Its enhanced neural architecture allows it to process vast amounts of tactical information simultaneously, identifying patterns and weaknesses that would escape the notice of lesser commanders. The creature's connection to the Hive Mind provides access to the collective tactical knowledge of the entire Tyranid species, making it one of the most formidable military minds in the galaxy. The psychological impact of facing the Swarmlord in combat extends far beyond its physical capabilities, as Imperial forces must contend with the knowledge that they are fighting an enemy that has learned from every previous engagement. The creature's ability to manifest repeatedly means that tactical advantages gained through hard-won victories become meaningless, as the Swarmlord incorporates these lessons into its strategic planning for future encounters. This creates a sense of futility among Imperial commanders that can prove as devastating as the creature's direct combat abilities. Broodlords serve as the primary interface between the Tyranid swarm and Genestealer cult infiltration operations, combining the stealth capabilities of their Genestealer origins with the command authority necessary to coordinate complex infiltration missions. These creatures represent the ultimate evolution of the Genestealer form, retaining the species' natural stealth and infiltration abilities, while gaining the enlarged neural structures required for synaptic function. The distinctive elongated skull that marks all synaptic creatures is particularly pronounced in Broodlords, housing the sophisticated bio-neural processors necessary for coordinating both cult activities and swarm operations. The physical capabilities of Broodlords reflect their dual nature as both infiltration specialists and combat commanders, with enhanced musculature that provides exceptional strength and agility while maintaining the lean profile necessary for stealth operations. Their 6 limbs include 4 arms equipped with razor-sharp rending claws and 2 legs that provide remarkable jumping ability and silent movement. The creature's natural weapons have been enhanced beyond those of standard Genestealers, with toxin-coated claws that can deliver paralytic compounds and reinforced chitin that provides improved protection against small arms fire. The relationship between Broodlords and Genestealer cults operates on multiple levels, with these creatures serving as both spiritual leaders and tactical coordinators for the infected human populations under their control. The Broodlord's psychic influence extends beyond simple command and control to include the manipulation of cult members' emotional states and psychological conditioning. This influence ensures absolute loyalty among cult members while maintaining the careful balance of secrecy and aggression necessary for successful infiltration operations. The role of Broodlords in planetary infiltration operations begins long before the arrival of the main Tyranid swarm, with these creatures establishing and nurturing Genestealer cults that can remain hidden for generations. The Broodlord's enhanced intelligence allows it to develop sophisticated long-term strategies for cult expansion and influence, identifying key targets for infection and manipulation while avoiding detection by Imperial authorities. The creature's ability to coordinate multiple cult cells across entire planetary populations makes it an invaluable asset during the preliminary phases of Tyranid invasions. The tactical coordination provided by broodlords during active infiltration operations demonstrates their sophisticated understanding of human psychology and imperial military doctrine. These creatures can analyze enemy defensive preparations and identify weaknesses that can be exploited by cult forces, while simultaneously coordinating sabotage operations that can cripple Imperial response capabilities. The Broodlord's connection to the Hive Mind allows it to time these operations to coincide with the arrival of the main swarm, maximizing the disruption caused by cult activities. The command capabilities of Broodlords extend to direct control over both cult forces and pure Tyranid bioforms, allowing them to coordinate combined operations that leverage the strengths of both force types. Genestealer cults can provide intelligence, sabotage capabilities, and access to Imperial facilities, while Tyranid bioforms offer superior combat capabilities and the ability to operate in environments hostile to human life. This combination of assets makes Broodlord-led operations particularly dangerous to Imperial forces, as they must contend with threats from both within and without their defensive perimeters. Tervigans represent the Hive Mind's approach to battlefield logistics and reinforcement, functioning as mobile spawning platforms capable of producing new bioforms during active combat operations. These massive creatures combine the protective instincts of maternal organisms with the tactical capabilities necessary for battlefield deployment, creating living factories that can adapt their production to meet changing tactical requirements. The distinctive bloated abdomen that characterizes Tervigans houses the specialized reproductive organs required for rapid bioform creation, while their forearms provide the defensive capabilities necessary to protect these vital systems. The spawning capabilities of Tervigans operate on principles similar to those found in fixed spawning pools, but with modifications that allow for rapid deployment and battlefield mobility. The creature's reproductive organs can process raw biological material and convert it into new bioforms within minutes, using genetic templates stored within the Tervigan's neural structures. The most commonly produced bioforms include termagants and other basic infantry types, though more sophisticated creatures can be spawned given sufficient time and resources. The battlefield birth capabilities of Tervigans provide Tyranid forces with unprecedented tactical flexibility, allowing commanders to reinforce threatened positions or exploit tactical opportunities without waiting for reinforcements from distant spawning facilities. The creature's ability to produce new bioforms continuously during combat operations means that Tyranid forces can maintain numerical superiority even in the face of heavy casualties. This capability often proves psychologically devastating to Imperial forces, who must contend with the knowledge that their enemies can literally replace losses faster than they can inflict them. The protective maternal instincts displayed by Tervigans extend beyond simple defensive behaviors to include active battlefield management that prioritizes the survival and effectiveness of their spawned offspring. These creatures can coordinate the actions of nearby bioforms with remarkable precision, using their synaptic capabilities to direct spawned creatures toward optimal tactical positions and objectives. The emotional bond between Tervigans and their offspring creates a level of coordination that exceeds that found in other Tyranid formations, as the maternal creature actively seeks to protect and nurture its spawned bioforms. The defensive capabilities of Tervigans reflect their crucial role within Tyranid battle formations, with heavily reinforced chitinous armor that can withstand concentrated fire from heavy weapons. The creature's massive size and bulk provide natural protection for its vital reproductive organs, while specialized defensive systems can generate protective barriers around spawning sites. The loss of a Tervigan represents a significant tactical setback for Tyranid forces, as it eliminates both the creature's spawning capabilities and the synaptic control it provides to nearby bioforms. The tactical deployment of Tervigans requires careful consideration of battlefield conditions and enemy capabilities. as these creatures must balance their spawning activities with the need to remain protected from enemy fire. The creatures typically operate from concealed positions behind the main battle line, using their extended range and indirect spawning capabilities to reinforce forward positions without exposing themselves to direct retaliation. The coordination between tervigans and other command organisms allows for sophisticated battlefield management that can adapt to changing tactical conditions in real time. Malanthropes serve as specialized support organisms that provide enhanced coordination and battlefield awareness to Tyranid forces through their sophisticated sensory capabilities and psychic enhancement functions. These floating creatures combine advanced bio-neural processing with specialized organs that can analyze battlefield conditions and transmit tactical information to other bioforms. The distinctive gas-filled sacs that keep Malanthropes airborne also house sophisticated chemical analysis systems that can detect enemy movements and identify tactical opportunities across wide areas. The battlefield role of Malanthropes extends beyond simple reconnaissance to include active coordination of swarm movements and tactical adaptation to enemy actions. These creatures can process vast amounts of sensory information simultaneously, identifying patterns and weaknesses that would escape the notice of other bioforms. The creature's connection to the hive mind allows it to share this information with other command organisms, creating a comprehensive battlefield awareness network that enhances the effectiveness of all Tyranid forces in the area. The psychic enhancement capabilities of Malanthropes focus on improving the coordination and effectiveness of nearby bioforms through the projection of localized psychic fields. These fields can accelerate the reflexes of combat organisms, improve their accuracy, and enhance their tactical awareness. The range and intensity of these enhancement effects varies according to the specific battlefield conditions and the number of Malanthropes present, with multiple creatures able to combine their efforts to create more powerful enhancement zones. Venomthropes function as area denial specialists within Tyranid formations, using their toxic spore clouds to create hazardous zones that can channel enemy movement and protect valuable assets. These creatures possess specialized glands that can produce and release various toxic compounds, creating persistent chemical barriers that remain dangerous long after the creatures themselves have moved on. The psychological impact of facing Venomthrope attacks often exceeds their direct military effectiveness, as few Imperial soldiers are prepared to advance through clouds of visible toxins that can kill through simple inhalation. The toxic capabilities of Venomthropes operate through multiple delivery systems, including direct contact poisons that can be transmitted through the creature's claws and spines, airborne toxins that can be released as defensive clouds, and persistent chemical compounds that can contaminate terrain and equipment. The variety of toxic effects available to these creatures allows them to adapt their attacks to specific enemy types and tactical situations, making them valuable assets in both offensive and defensive operations. The defensive applications of Venomthrope toxic clouds provide Tyranid forces with mobile cover that can protect advancing bioforms from enemy fire, while simultaneously threatening any opponents who attempt to engage them at close range. The creature's ability to generate these protective clouds on demand allows for tactical flexibility that can adapt to changing battlefield conditions, creating temporary safe zones that can be used for regrouping or reinforcement operations. The approach of Hive Fleet Behemoth through the intergalactic void-marked humanities first encounter with the true scope of the Tyranid threat. Unlike the isolated incidents that had plagued the Eastern Fringe, Behemoth represented a coordinated invasion force of unprecedented scale, comprising thousands of bioships arranged in a formation that stretched across light years of space. Long-range auger arrays detected the fleet's approach months before its arrival, but Imperial authorities struggled to comprehend the readings they were receiving. The bioships moved with purpose and coordination that defied conventional understanding of Xeno's behavior, maintaining perfect formation while traveling at velocities that should have been impossible for organic constructs. The fleet's trajectory aimed directly at the Ultramar system, home to the Ultramarines chapter and one of the Imperium's most prosperous and well-defended regions. Ultramar's strategic importance extended far beyond its military value, as the system served as a crucial supply hub for Imperial forces throughout the eastern fringe. The loss of Ultramar would create a logistical catastrophe that could cripple Imperial operations across multiple sectors, making the system's defense a matter of paramount importance to the wider Imperium. As Behemoth drew closer to the galaxy's edge, Imperial monitoring stations began detecting disturbing psychic phenomena associated with the fleet's approach. Astropaths reported experiencing nightmares filled with images of endless consumption and predatory hunger, while navigator houses noted increasing difficulty in perceiving the astronomicon within the fleet's projected path. These early manifestations of the shadow and the warp provided the first indication that the approaching fleet represented something fundamentally different from conventional Xenos raiders. The first direct contact with Hive Fleet Behemoth occurred at the mining world of Tyran, a modest Imperial outpost positioned along the fleet's approach vector. The planet's strategic value lay primarily in its mineral resources and its position as an early warning station for the Ultramar system. When astropathic communications from Tyran ceased abruptly, Imperial authorities initially attributed the silence to equipment failure or routine technical difficulties. The dispatch of a reconnaissance vessel to investigate revealed the horrifying truth of what had befallen the world. The reconnaissance team discovered Tyran stripped of all biological matter, its mining facilities standing empty and pristine, while the planet's entire biosphere had vanished without trace. The thoroughness of the consumption exceeded anything previously encountered, with even bacterial life forms eliminated from the planet's ecosystem. Most disturbing were the massive organic structures that had been constructed across the planet's surface, resembling enormous digestive organs that had processed the world's biomass before being abandoned by their creators. The investigation of Tyran provided Imperial forces with their first detailed intelligence on Tyranid bioship capabilities and invasion procedures. The organic structures left behind displayed sophisticated biological engineering that operated on principles completely alien to Imperial understanding. Analysis of the structures revealed that they had been capable of breaking down organic matter at the molecular level, extracting useful genetic material while converting the remainder into bioplasma for transport back to the fleet. The efficiency of the process approached theoretical maximums, with virtually no waste material left behind. The reconnaissance team's reports described finding scattered chitinous fragments across Tyran's surface, remnants of the creatures responsible for the planet's consumption. These fragments displayed properties that challenged Imperial xenobiological understanding, exhibiting cellular structures that seemed to adapt and evolve even in death. The psychic resonance emanating from these remains caused several crew members to experience violent nightmares and waking visions of endless hunger, providing early evidence of the psychic phenomena that would later be identified as the shadow in the warp. The fall of Tyran served as a catalyst for Imperial military preparations throughout the Ultramar system. Marnius Calgar, chapter master of the Ultramarines, recognized the existential threat posed by the approaching fleet and began implementing defensive measures that would transform the system into a fortress capable of withstanding the coming assault. The preparations involved not only military fortifications, but also the evacuation of civilian populations from outer system worlds and the stockpiling of supplies necessary for an extended siege. Calgar's strategic assessment of the situation drew upon centuries of experience in defending Ultramar against various threats, but the approaching Tyranid fleet presented challenges unlike any previously encountered. The enemy's apparent immunity to conventional intelligence gathering meant that Imperial forces would be fighting blind, unable to predict enemy movements or intentions through traditional reconnaissance methods. The psychic phenomena associated with the fleet's approach suggested that even astropathic communication might be compromised during the coming battle. The defensive preparations for Ultramar focused on creating multiple layers of resistance that could delay and attenuate the Tyranid assault while preserving Imperial forces for decisive engagements. The system's outer worlds were fortified with automated defense systems and skeleton crews, designed to inflict maximum casualties on the invaders while providing intelligence on enemy capabilities and tactics. The main defensive effort concentrated on Muckrag itself, where the full strength of the Ultramarines chapter would make it stand against the alien menace. The approach of Hive Fleet Behemoth through the outer system demonstrated the sophisticated nature of Tyranid invasion tactics. Rather than launching immediate assaults on fortified positions, the bioships established orbital positions around target worlds and began systematic consumption operations. This methodical approach allowed the fleet to replenish its biomass reserves while simultaneously weakening Imperial defenses through attrition. The psychological impact of watching entire worlds being consumed proved as devastating as the direct military effects. The void battles that erupted as Imperial naval forces attempted to intercept the approaching bioships revealed the true extent of Tyranid technological capabilities. The bioships demonstrated weapon systems that operated on principles completely alien to Imperial understanding, firing living projectiles that could adapt to point defense systems and defensive measures that evolved in response to Imperial tactics. The organic nature of the enemy vessels made them difficult to damage with conventional weapons, as destroyed sections could regenerate during combat. Imperial Navy vessels found themselves facing opponents that could literally learn from each engagement, with bioships demonstrating increasingly sophisticated countermeasures to Imperial tactics as the battles progressed. The adaptive nature of Tyranid biotechnology meant that weapons and strategies that proved effective in early engagements became progressively less useful as the enemy developed appropriate responses. This forced Imperial commanders to constantly adapt their own tactics, creating a deadly game of evolution that favored the side with superior adaptive capabilities. The first major engagement of the campaign occurred when elements of the Imperial Navy's battle fleet Tempestus attempted to intercept a Tyranid vanguard force approaching the outer system. The battle demonstrated both the courage of Imperial forces and the horrifying effectiveness of Tyranid bioweapons. Imperial vessels that had served with distinction for centuries found themselves outmaneuvered by opponents that could change their tactics in real time, adapting to Imperial fire patterns and defensive measures with disturbing speed. The bioship's weapon systems proved particularly effective against Imperial void shields, with living projectiles that could bore through energy barriers and establish footholds within Imperial vessels. These boarding organisms demonstrated the ability to consume ship systems from within, turning the vessel's own infrastructure against their crews. The psychological impact of fighting an enemy that could literally digest their ships around them proved devastating to Imperial morale, as crew members found themselves facing opponents that viewed them as nothing more than raw material. The approach to Muckrag itself marked the beginning of the campaign's most critical phase, as Hive Fleet Behemoth concentrated its full strength against the Ultramarines' home world. The planet's defensive preparations had transformed it into a fortress world capable of withstanding extended siege, with orbital defense platforms, surface-to-orbit weapons, and extensive fortification networks protecting key installations. The polar fortresses that guarded Muckrag's most strategic locations represented the pinnacle of Imperial defensive engineering, designed to withstand assault by any conventional enemy. The Tyranid assault on Muckrag began with massive spore bombardments that seeded the planet's atmosphere with countless organisms designed to establish beachheads for the main invasion force. These spores demonstrated remarkable adaptability, with different variants optimized for various environmental conditions and defensive measures. The organisms that emerged from successful spore impacts began immediate consumption of local biomass, while simultaneously establishing communication networks with the orbiting fleet. The defense of Crag's polar fortresses became the focal point of Imperial resistance, with these installations serving as both defensive strongholds and command centers for the planet's protection. The fortresses had been constructed to withstand orbital bombardment and ground assault, with multiple layers of defensive systems designed to channel enemy attacks into predetermined kill zones. The arrival of Tyranid forces tested these defenses to their limits, as the enemy demonstrated tactics and capabilities that challenged every assumption underlying the fortress's design. The assault on the polar fortresses revealed the true horror of fighting Tyranid forces in close quarters. Imperial defenders found themselves facing enemies that could adapt to their tactics in real time, with bioforms that developed resistance to weapons that had been effective minutes earlier. The organic nature of the attackers created psychological challenges that conventional military training had not prepared Imperial forces to handle, as soldiers struggled to maintain discipline while fighting creatures that seemed to violate the natural order. Marneus Calgar's leadership during the siege of Crag demonstrated the qualities that had made him one of the Imperium's most respected chapter masters. His tactical acumen allowed him to anticipate enemy movements and deploy his forces with maximum effectiveness, while his personal courage inspired the Ultramarines to superhuman efforts in defense of their home world. The chapter master's decision to commit the first company to the most dangerous defensive positions reflected his understanding that only the most elite forces could hope to stem the Tyranid tide. The sacrifice of the first company became one of the most heroic episodes in Ultramarines history, as these veteran warriors threw themselves into desperate defensive actions that bought precious time for the planet's overall defense. The Terminators of the First Company proved particularly effective against Tyranid bioforms, with their tactical dreadnought armor providing protection against the aliens' natural weapons, while their storm bolters and power fists inflicted devastating casualties on the attackers. The psychological impact of seeing these elite warriors in action helped maintain morale among other Imperial forces during the darkest moments of the siege. The final confrontation on Crag occurred when the largest Tyranid bioforms launched a coordinated assault on the planet's primary defensive positions. These massive creatures, later identified as Bio-Titans, demonstrated firepower equivalent to Imperial super heavy vehicles, while maintaining the mobility and adaptability of living organisms. The appearance of these monsters on the battlefield created panic among Imperial forces, as few weapons in the planetary defense arsenal proved capable of inflicting significant damage on such massive targets. The battle against the Bio-Titans required the deployment of the Ultramarines' most potent weapons and the personal intervention of Marneus Calgar himself. The chapter master's tactical genius allowed him to identify weaknesses in the creature's biological architecture, coordinating concentrated fire missions that could bring down even the largest bioforms. The cost of these victories proved enormous, with entire companies of Ultramarines sacrificing themselves to eliminate single Bio-Titans. The turning point of the campaign came when Imperial forces succeeded in eliminating key synaptic creatures within the Tyranid swarm, causing widespread disruption to enemy coordination and command structures. The loss of these vital organisms created confusion among the bioforms, as creatures that had been operating with perfect coordination suddenly found themselves isolated and directionless. This tactical breakthrough allowed Imperial forces to launch counterattacks that exploited the temporary weakness in enemy formations. The counteroffensive that followed the disruption of Tyranid command structures demonstrated the effectiveness of concentrated Imperial firepower against disorganized enemy forces. Artillery barrages and orbital bombardments that had previously proven ineffective against coordinated Tyranid formations now inflicted devastating casualties on confused and isolated bioforms. The psychological impact of seeing the seemingly invincible enemy in disarray provided a crucial morale boost to Imperial forces who had been fighting a desperate defensive battle. The final defeat of Hive Fleet Behemoth required the ultimate sacrifice from Imperial forces, with entire regiments of Imperial Guard and companies of Space Marines giving their lives to ensure the alien menace could not recover from its temporary disorganization. The systematic elimination of remaining Tyranid organisms across Macragge and the surrounding system required months of careful operations, as isolated bioforms continued to pose threats to Imperial forces even after the main swarm had been broken. The aftermath of Behemoth's defeat revealed both the scope of Imperial losses and the valuable lessons learned from humanity's first major encounter with the Tyranid threat. The casualties sustained during the campaign numbered in the millions, with entire Imperial Guard regiments eliminated and the Ultramarines chapter reduced to a fraction of its former strength. The material losses included numerous starships, orbital defense platforms, and the complete devastation of several worlds within the Ultramar system. The intelligence gathered during the campaign provided Imperial forces with their first comprehensive understanding of Tyranid biology, tactics, and capabilities. The analysis of captured bioforms revealed the sophisticated nature of Tyranid genetic engineering, while battlefield observations documented the aliens' ability to adapt to Imperial weapons and tactics. This information became the foundation for new military doctrines designed specifically to counter the Tyranid threat, including specialized ammunition types and tactical procedures optimized for fighting adaptive biological enemies. The scattered splinter fleets that survived Behemoth's defeat posed ongoing threats to Imperial forces throughout the Eastern Fringe. These remnant forces, while significantly reduced in strength, retained the basic characteristics that made Tyranids so dangerous, including their ability to consume biomass and reproduce new organisms. The hunt for these splinter fleets became a priority for Imperial forces, as even small groups of surviving Tyranids could potentially rebuild into significant threats given sufficient time and resources. The lessons learned from the Behemoth campaign influenced Imperial military thinking for generations, establishing new doctrines and procedures that would prove crucial in subsequent encounters with Tyranid forces. The importance of targeting synaptic creatures became a fundamental principle of anti-Tyranid warfare, while the development of specialized weapons and ammunition types provided Imperial forces with more effective tools for fighting biological enemies. The campaign also highlighted the crucial importance of maintaining astropathic communications and the devastating effects of the Shadow in the warp on Imperial coordination capabilities. The strategic implications of the Behemoth campaign extended far beyond the immediate military consequences, as the encounter demonstrated that the Imperium faced a threat unlike any previously encountered. The aliens' apparent immunity to conventional intelligence gathering and their ability to adapt to Imperial tactics suggested that future encounters would require fundamentally different approaches to warfare. The campaign's outcome, while technically a victory for Imperial forces, came at such enormous cost that it raised questions about the Imperium's ability to withstand repeated assaults of similar magnitude. The destruction of Hive Fleet Behemoth marked not the end of the Tyranid threat, but merely the conclusion of the first chapter in humanity's struggle against the Great Devourer. As Imperial forces celebrated their hard-won victory and began the monumental task of rebuilding the devastated Ultramar system, new contacts began appearing on long-range auger arrays across the Eastern Fringe. These readings displayed the same disturbing characteristics that had marked Behemoth's approach, but the patterns were different. Where Behemoth had struck as a single, massive spear thrust aimed at the heart of Imperial space, these new contacts suggested something far more insidious and tactically sophisticated. Hive Fleet Kraken emerged from the intergalactic void not as a unified armada, but as a vast network of interconnected tendrils that stretched across multiple sectors simultaneously. The fleet's approach defied conventional understanding of fleet tactics, as individual bioship formations moved independently while maintaining coordination through the Hive Mind's psychic network. This multi-vector assault strategy represented a fundamental evolution in Tyranid invasion doctrine, suggesting that the collective consciousness had learned from Behemoth's defeat and adapted its approach accordingly. The fragmentation of Kraken into numerous splinter fleets created unprecedented challenges for Imperial defensive planning, where Behemoth's concentrated assault had allowed Imperial forces to focus their defensive efforts on specific systems. Kraken's dispersed approach forced the Imperium to defend multiple targets simultaneously across vast regions of space. The fleet's tendrils probed Imperial defenses at dozens of points, testing response times and defensive capabilities, while gathering intelligence on Imperial military deployments and capabilities. Imperial Navy reconnaissance vessels attempting to track Kraken's movements reported encounters with bioships displaying characteristics never observed in Behemoth's forces. These vessels demonstrated enhanced stealth capabilities that made them difficult to detect on standard auger arrays, while their weapon systems showed evidence of adaptation based on intelligence gathered from previous encounters with Imperial forces. The bioship's ability to operate independently while maintaining coordination with distant fleet elements suggested a level of tactical sophistication that exceeded anything previously documented. The first major engagement with Kraken forces occurred in the Ikar system, where Imperial defenders encountered Tyranid bioforms that challenged every assumption about the aliens' capabilities and limitations. The planet Ikar 4 had been fortified following lessons learned from the Behemoth campaign, with defensive positions designed specifically to counter known Tyranid tactics and bioform capabilities. The arrival of Kraken forces revealed the futility of preparing for a static enemy, as the Tyranids demonstrated adaptations that rendered many Imperial countermeasures obsolete. The assault on Ikar 4 began with spore bombardments that seeded the planet's atmosphere with organisms unlike any previously encountered. These spores demonstrated remarkable resistance to the atmospheric defense systems that had proven effective against Behemoth's forces, with specialized variants that could survive in the planet's toxic industrial atmosphere, while others adapted to the specific chemical composition of Imperial void shield generators. The diversity of spore types suggested that Kraken had analyzed Imperial defensive measures and developed specific countermeasures for each system. The bioforms that emerged from successful spore impacts displayed characteristics that shocked Imperial defenders who had believed themselves prepared for Tyranid assault tactics. Termagants equipped with enhanced carapaces that could deflect lasgun fire moved alongside Hormagaunts whose scything talons had been modified to penetrate the specific armor types used by Ikar 4's defenders. The speed of these adaptations suggested that Kraken possessed detailed intelligence on Imperial military equipment and had pre-engineered countermeasures for specific defensive scenarios. The appearance of entirely new bioform variants during the Ikar 4 campaign demonstrated Kraken's ability to rapidly evolve specialized organisms for specific battlefield conditions. Acid-spitting creatures that could dissolve the planet's ferrocrete fortifications operated alongside burrowing organisms that could tunnel through the reinforced foundations of defensive positions. These specialized bioforms appeared to have been designed specifically for the urban warfare conditions that characterized much of the fighting on Ikar 4, suggesting that the Hive Mind had analyzed the planet's defensive layout and created appropriate countermeasures. The defenders of Ikar 4 found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move, with Tyranid forces demonstrating tactical awareness that exceeded anything observed during the Behemoth campaign. Imperial fire positions that had been carefully concealed found themselves under accurate bio-weapon fire from creatures that should not have been able to detect them. Supply routes that had been established to avoid known Tyranid infiltration methods came under attack from bioforms that seemed to understand Imperial logistics doctrine better than many Imperial commanders. The breakthrough moment for Kraken forces came when they deployed bioforms capable of disrupting Imperial communication networks through targeted attacks on Vox relay stations and command bunkers. These specialized organisms demonstrated the ability to identify and neutralize Imperial command structures with surgical precision, creating chaos in the defensive coordination that had been essential to Imperial success against Behemoth. The loss of communication capability forced Imperial units to operate independently, playing directly into Tyranid tactical preferences for isolated engagements. The final phase of the Ichar 4 campaign saw the deployment of bio-titans that incorporated lessons learned from Behemoth's encounters with Imperial heavy weapons. These massive creatures displayed enhanced armor configurations that provided improved protection against las-cannon fire and missile strikes, while their weapon systems had been modified to counter the specific tactics that Imperial forces had used successfully against their predecessors. The psychological impact of facing evolved versions of enemies that had previously been defeated proved devastating to Imperial morale. The fall of Ichar 4 marked the beginning of Kraken's systematic advance through Imperial space, with splinter fleets striking at targets across multiple sectors while maintaining coordination through the Hive Mind's psychic network. The fleet's ability to operate across such vast distances while maintaining tactical coherence demonstrated the sophisticated nature of Tyranid strategic planning and the effectiveness of their psychic communication systems. Imperial forces found themselves fighting a war on multiple fronts against an enemy that could coordinate operations across interstellar distances. The assault on Craftworld Eandon represented Kraken's most ambitious operation, as the Tyranids demonstrated their willingness to attack targets that had previously been considered beyond their capabilities. The Eldar Craftworld had survived for millennia through a combination of advanced technology, psychic prowess, and careful avoidance of direct confrontation with overwhelming enemy forces. The decision to target Eandon suggested that Kraken possessed intelligence on Eldar capabilities and had developed specific strategies for countering their defensive measures. The approach to Eandon began with reconnaissance operations conducted by specialized bioforms that could operate in the void without life support, allowing them to infiltrate the Craftworld's outer defenses and gather intelligence on Eldar military capabilities. These organisms demonstrated stealth capabilities that exceeded even those of lictors, with adaptive camouflage that could mimic the psychoplastic materials used in Eldar construction. The intelligence gathered during these operations provided Kraken with detailed information on Eandon's defensive layout and the deployment patterns of its Guardian forces. The initial assault on Eandon's outer defenses revealed the extent of Kraken's preparation for engaging Eldar forces. The Tyranids deployed bioforms specifically adapted to counter Eldar weapons technology, with creatures whose carapaces could disperse the focused energy of shuriken weapons, and others whose neural systems had been hardened against psychic attack. The speed and precision of these adaptations suggested that Kraken had encountered Eldar forces previously and had incorporated countermeasures into its biological arsenal. The breach of Eandon's Wraithbone hull marked the beginning of the most devastating assault the Craftworld had experienced in its long history. Tyranid boarding organisms poured through the gaps created by bioacid attacks, bringing with them the full horror of close-quarters combat against adaptive biological enemies. The Eldar defenders found themselves fighting in the corridors and chambers of their own home, with every room becoming a potential battlefield where their superior technology and psychic abilities were negated by the confined space and overwhelming numbers of their attackers. The response of Eandon's aspect warriors to the Tyranid invasion demonstrated both the martial prowess of the Eldar and the horrifying effectiveness of Kraken's adaptive capabilities. The Dire Avengers, who formed the Craftworld's primary defensive force, initially proved effective against Tyranid bioforms, with their shuriken catapults and superior mobility allowing them to engage the aliens on favorable terms. However, as the battle progressed, the Tyranids began deploying countermeasures that neutralized many of the Aspect Warriors' tactical advantages. The Howling Banshees, who attempted to engage Tyranid forces in close combat, found themselves facing bioforms that had been specifically adapted to counter their traditional fighting methods. Creatures with enhanced auditory protection negated the Banshee's psychic scream, while reinforced carapaces provided protection against their traditional weapons. The psychological impact of seeing their most effective warriors neutralized by enemy adaptation proved devastating to Eldar morale, as the defenders realized they were fighting an enemy that could evolve countermeasures to their most cherished tactical doctrines. The Dark Reapers, who provided heavy weapons support for Eandon's defense, found their missile launchers and other ranged weapons increasingly ineffective as Tyranid bioforms adapted to their attack patterns. The creature's ability to develop resistance to specific weapon types meant that tactics that had proven effective in early engagements became progressively less useful as the battle continued. The Reaper's traditional role as the Craftworld's ultimate defensive asset was compromised by an enemy that could literally evolve past their weapon's effectiveness. The deployment of Eandon's Avatar of Kine represented the Craftworld's most desperate attempt to stem the Tyranid advance. This ancient war god, awakened from its slumber in the Craftworld's heart, brought with it the full fury of Eldar martial prowess and the psychic might of their war deity. The Avatar's initial assault on Tyranid positions proved devastatingly effective, with the creature's molten sword cleaving through bioform ranks, while its psychic presence inspired nearby Eldar forces to superhuman efforts. The Tyranid response to the Avatar's intervention demonstrated the Hive Mind's ability to adapt even to threats of godlike power. Specialized bioforms began appearing that could resist the Avatar's psychic influence, while others demonstrated the ability to regenerate from wounds that should have been fatal. The prolonged engagement between the Avatar and increasingly adapted Tyranid forces became a microcosm of the broader struggle, with each side escalating their capabilities in response to the other's adaptations. The fall of numerous aspect shrines during the assault represented catastrophic losses for Eandon's military capabilities and cultural heritage. These sacred sites, which had served as training grounds and spiritual centers for the Craftworld's warriors for millennia, were systematically consumed by Tyranid organisms that showed no regard for their cultural significance. The loss of these shrines meant not only the destruction of irreplaceable artifacts, but also the elimination of the knowledge and traditions they contained. The consumption of Eandon's population by Tyranid forces created a feedback loop that strengthened the attackers while weakening the defenders. Each Eldar consumed provided the Tyranids with genetic material that could be analyzed and incorporated into new bioforms, while simultaneously reducing the Craftworld's ability to resist further attacks. The psychological impact of seeing their people processed by alien organisms proved as devastating as the direct military effects, as surviving Eldar struggled to maintain their will to fight in the face of such horror. The breakthrough that allowed Kraken forces to penetrate Eandon's core regions came when specialized bioforms succeeded in disrupting the Craftworld's psychic defenses. These creatures, apparently designed specifically to counter Eldar psychic abilities, created zones of psychic interference that prevented the Craftworld's seers from coordinating defensive efforts or predicting Tyranid movements. The loss of psychic coordination forced Eldar forces to rely on conventional communication methods, which proved inadequate for the fluid tactical situations that characterized the fighting. The final assault on Eandon's core chambers saw the deployment of bio-titans that had been specifically adapted for fighting in the confined spaces of the Craftworld's interior. These massive creatures demonstrated the ability to navigate through corridors and chambers that should have been too small for their bulk, with flexible skeletal structures that could compress and expand as needed. The appearance of these monsters in the Craftworld's most sacred spaces represented the ultimate violation of Eldar sanctuary and the triumph of alien adaptation over ancient wisdom. The evacuation of Eandon's survivors required desperate measures that cost the Craftworld many of its most valuable assets. The decision to sacrifice portions of the Craftworld structure to create escape routes for fleeing civilians demonstrated the extent of the Eldar's desperation, as they destroyed irreplaceable sections of their home to save what lives they could. The psychological trauma of abandoning their ancestral home to alien consumption would scar the survivors for generations, creating a legacy of loss that would influence Eldar attitudes toward the Tyranid threat for millennia to come. The aftermath of Kraken's assault on Eandon revealed the true scope of the damage inflicted on one of the galaxy's most ancient and sophisticated civilizations. The Craftworld's population had been reduced to a fraction of its former size, with entire clans and family lines eliminated during the fighting. The loss of aspect warriors represented not just military casualties, but the destruction of martial traditions that had been preserved for thousands of years, creating gaps in Eldar military capability that would take generations to rebuild. The strategic implications of Kraken's success against Eandon extended far beyond the immediate military consequences, as the assault demonstrated the Tyranids' ability to adapt to and overcome even the most sophisticated defensive measures. The Eldar's combination of advanced technology, psychic prowess, and millennia of tactical experience had proven insufficient against an enemy that could evolve countermeasures in real time. This revelation forced a fundamental reassessment of anti-Tyranid strategies across the galaxy, as military commanders realized that no defensive measure could be considered permanent against such adaptive foes. The lasting impact of Hive Fleet Kraken on Imperial military doctrine proved even more significant than the immediate tactical lessons learned from individual engagements. The fleet's multi-vector approach and its ability to coordinate operations across vast distances forced Imperial strategists to develop new approaches to fleet defense and resource allocation. The traditional Imperial strategy of concentrating forces for decisive battles proved inadequate against an enemy that could strike simultaneously at multiple targets while maintaining strategic coordination. The establishment of new Deathwatch protocols specifically designed for Tyranid encounters represented one of the most important institutional responses to the Kraken campaign. These specialized procedures incorporated lessons learned from both Behemoth and Kraken operations, emphasizing the importance of rapid adaptation and the need for flexible tactical responses to enemy evolution. The protocols included specific guidelines for targeting synaptic creatures, procedures for dealing with adaptive bioforms, and communication protocols designed to function despite the shadow in the warp. The development of specialized anti-Tyranid ammunition types became a priority for Imperial military research following the Kraken campaign. Standard bolt rounds and lasgun charges had proven increasingly ineffective against adapted bioforms, necessitating the creation of new weapon systems specifically designed to counter biological targets. These developments included acid rounds that could dissolve chitinous armor, explosive shells designed to cause maximum tissue damage, and specialized toxins that could disrupt Tyranid nervous systems. The psychological impact of the Kraken campaign on Imperial forces proved as significant as its tactical implications, as soldiers who had believed themselves prepared for Tyranid assault found themselves facing enemies that exceeded their worst expectations. The aliens' ability to adapt to Imperial tactics in real time created a sense of futility among frontline troops, who struggled to maintain morale while fighting an enemy that seemed to learn from every engagement. The development of new training programs and psychological support systems became essential for maintaining Imperial military effectiveness against future Tyranid threats. The emergence of Hive Fleet Leviathan from beneath the galactic plane represented a fundamental shift in the scale and nature of the Tyranid threat. Unlike the previous incursions of Behemoth and Kraken, which had approached the galaxy from the eastern fringe in relatively concentrated formations, Leviathan's approach vector defied conventional understanding of fleet tactics and strategic planning. The massive bioship formations emerged from the intergalactic void south of the galactic plane, their approach masked by the gravitational interference of the galaxy's own mass, until they were already within striking distance of Imperial space. The sheer magnitude of Leviathan dwarfed all previous Tyranid incursions, with reconnaissance reports describing a fleet that stretched across multiple sectors simultaneously. Imperial Navy long-range auger arrays detected bioship concentrations that exceeded the combined strength of Behemoth and Kraken, while the fleet's dispersed formation suggested a level of strategic sophistication that incorporated lessons learned from previous encounters with Imperial forces. The Hive Mind had clearly adapted its approach based on the outcomes of earlier campaigns, developing invasion strategies that could exploit the Imperium's defensive weaknesses while minimizing exposure to concentrated Imperial firepower. The approach from below the galactic plane provided Leviathan with significant tactical advantages that previous Hive fleets had lacked. The relative emptiness of intergalactic space in that region meant that Imperial monitoring stations were sparse and poorly positioned to detect the fleet's approach, until it was too late to organize effective defensive responses. The gravitational effects of the galaxy's spiral arms created sensor shadows that masked the true extent of Leviathan's forces, allowing the Tyranids to achieve strategic surprise on a scale that had seemed impossible after the lessons learned from Behemoth and Kraken. The initial probing attacks launched by Leviathan's vanguard forces revealed the fleet's unprecedented diversity of bioforms and tactical capabilities. Imperial defenders encountered creatures that displayed adaptations specifically designed to counter the anti-Tyranid measures developed during previous campaigns, suggesting that the Hive Mind had analyzed Imperial tactical responses and developed appropriate countermeasures. The appearance of bioforms with enhanced resistance to specialized ammunition types and defensive capabilities optimized against Imperial heavy weapons indicated that Leviathan represented not just a larger threat, but a more sophisticated one. The fleet's approach triggered the largest mobilization of Imperial forces since the Horus Heresy, with entire battle groups redeployed from other theaters to meet the approaching threat. The scale of the response reflected both the magnitude of the danger and the hard-won understanding of Tyranid capabilities that Imperial commanders had gained through previous encounters. The deployment of multiple Space Marine chapters, dozens of Imperial Guard regiments, and significant portions of the Imperial Navy demonstrated the Imperium's recognition that Leviathan posed an existential threat that required unprecedented defensive measures. The Octarius War emerged as one of the most significant and unintended consequences of Leviathan's advance, creating a three-way conflict that would rage for decades and fundamentally alter the balance of power in the affected sectors. The war began when elements of Leviathan encountered the massive Orc Empire of Octarius, a sprawling collection of worlds that had been unified under the rule of warlord Gazkul Mag, Uruk Thraka's former lieutenant, Overfiend Grisguts. The collision between these two forces created a conflict of unprecedented scale and brutality, with both sides demonstrating their respective capabilities for rapid adaptation and escalation. The initial engagements between Leviathan bioforms and Octarius orcs revealed the fundamental differences in their approaches to warfare and biological adaptation. The Tyranids' sophisticated biological engineering and coordinated tactical responses clashed with the orcs' crude but effective technology and their natural inclination toward increasingly violent conflict. The orcs' ability to grow larger and more aggressive in response to prolonged warfare provided them with natural advantages against an enemy that relied on overwhelming numerical superiority and tactical coordination. The Octarius system became the focal point of a conflict that defied conventional military analysis, as both sides demonstrated capabilities that exceeded their previous documented performance levels. The orcs' exposure to constant combat against Tyranid forces triggered their natural growth responses, producing increasingly large and aggressive specimens that could match the bioforms in close combat. The Tyranids responded by developing specialized organisms optimized for fighting orc technology and tactics, creating an evolutionary arms race that pushed both species to new extremes of lethality. The prolonged nature of the Octarius War created conditions that favored both species' natural advantages while simultaneously pushing them to develop new capabilities. The orcs' ability to reproduce rapidly through spore-based reproduction allowed them to maintain numerical parity with Tyranid forces despite suffering enormous casualties. The constant warfare also triggered the emergence of increasingly sophisticated orc technology, as their natural engineering instincts responded to the challenge of fighting an enemy that could adapt to their weapons and tactics. The Tyranids' response to the Orc challenge demonstrated the Hive Mind's ability to develop specialized bioforms for specific enemy types and combat conditions. New variants of warrior organisms appeared that were optimized for fighting Orc technology, with enhanced armor configurations that could withstand the crude but effective weapons favored by greenskin forces. The development of bioforms specifically designed to counter Orc psychology and combat doctrine showed the sophisticated nature of Tyranid adaptation capabilities. The three-way nature of the conflict emerged as Imperial forces attempted to contain both the Tyranid and Orc threats while preventing either side from achieving decisive victory. Imperial strategists recognized that allowing either faction to eliminate the other would create an even more dangerous enemy, as victorious Tyranids would gain access to vast amounts of biomass, while successful Orcs would achieve the size and aggression levels that came with prolonged warfare. The Imperial response involved carefully calculated interventions designed to maintain the balance of power while preventing either side from expanding beyond the Octarius system. The deployment of Imperial Guard regiments to the Octarius theater required unprecedented logistical support and coordination, as supply lines had to be established through regions contested by both Tyranid and Orc forces. The Imperial Navy's role in maintaining these supply routes became crucial to the war effort, with convoy escort duties requiring constant vigilance against both bioship attacks and Orc raiding parties. The psychological strain on Imperial forces operating in a three-way conflict zone proved enormous, as soldiers found themselves fighting enemies on multiple fronts while never being certain which threat posed the greater immediate danger. The devastation of Baal represented Leviathan's most ambitious assault on a Space Marine homeworld, targeting the Blood Angels chapter and their successor chapters in a coordinated campaign that demonstrated the full scope of Tyranid strategic planning. The approach to the Baal system began with reconnaissance operations conducted by specialized bioforms that could operate in the void without detection, gathering intelligence on the system's defenses and the deployment patterns of the Blood Angels forces. The thoroughness of this preliminary intelligence gathering suggested that the Hive Mind had learned from previous encounters with Space Marine forces and had developed specific strategies for countering their defensive capabilities. The Blood Angels' preparation for Leviathan's assault drew upon centuries of experience defending their homeworld against various threats, but the approaching Tyranid forces presented challenges that exceeded anything in the chapter's long history. Commander Dante, the chapter master whose age and experience made him one of the Imperium's most respected military leaders, recognized that conventional defensive strategies would prove inadequate against an enemy of Leviathan's magnitude. The defensive preparations involved not only the Blood Angels themselves, but also their numerous successor chapters, creating the largest concentration of Sanguinius's gene seed since the Great Crusade. The arrival of successor chapters at Baal created an unprecedented gathering of the sons of Sanguinius, with the Flesh Terrors, Angels in Carmine, Blood Drinkers, and dozens of other chapters contributing their strength to the defense of their Primarch's homeworld. The coordination of these diverse forces required careful management of their different combat doctrines and organizational structures, while the psychological impact of fighting alongside their genetic brothers provided a morale boost that helped offset the overwhelming nature of the approaching threat. The initial Tyranid assault on Baal's outer defenses began with massive spore bombardments that seeded the system's worlds with organisms designed to establish beachheads for the main invasion force. These spores demonstrated remarkable adaptability to the harsh conditions found on Baal's moons, with specialized variants that could survive in the radioactive environment of Baal Secundus, and others that could operate in the toxic atmosphere of the system's industrial worlds. The diversity of spore types suggested that Leviathan had analyzed the Baal system's environmental conditions and had developed specific bioforms for each world's unique challenges. The defense of Baal Secundus became a crucial element in the overall campaign, as the moon's strategic position made it essential for controlling access to Baal itself. The Blood Angels' defensive positions on the moon had been prepared over centuries, with fortifications that incorporated lessons learned from previous campaigns and defensive systems specifically designed to counter Tyranid assault tactics. The arrival of Leviathan forces tested these defenses to their limits, as the enemy demonstrated capabilities that exceeded previous intelligence estimates. The appearance of new bioform variants during the assault on Baal Secundus shocked Imperial defenders who had believed themselves prepared for Tyranid capabilities. Creatures with enhanced resistance to the specialized ammunition types developed for anti-Tyranid warfare operated alongside bioforms that demonstrated immunity to the psychic abilities that Blood Angels librarians had used effectively in previous encounters. The speed of these adaptations suggested that Leviathan possessed detailed intelligence on Blood Angels' combat doctrine and had developed specific countermeasures for their traditional tactics. The assault on Baal itself marked the climax of Leviathan's campaign against the Blood Angels, with bioship formations establishing orbital positions around the planet, while massive ground forces prepared for the final assault. The planet's ancient fortifications, some dating back to the Great Crusade, provided formidable defensive positions that channeled attacking forces into predetermined kill zones. The Blood Angels' knowledge of every corridor and chamber in their fortress monastery gave them significant advantages in the close-quarters combat that characterized much of the fighting. The deployment of Bio-Titans against Baal's primary defensive positions created breaches in fortifications that had withstood assault for millennia. These massive creatures demonstrated enhanced capabilities that exceeded those of bioforms encountered in previous campaigns, with weapon systems that could penetrate the fortress monastery's ancient walls and defensive measures that could withstand the concentrated fire of the Blood Angels' heaviest weapons. The psychological impact of seeing their ancestral home under assault by such monstrous creatures proved devastating to Blood Angels' morale. Commander Dante's leadership during the Siege of Baal demonstrated the tactical acumen that had made him one of the Imperium's most respected commanders. His ability to coordinate the diverse forces under his command while maintaining defensive coherence in the face of overwhelming enemy pressure proved crucial to the chapter's survival. The commander's decision to commit the Sanguinary Guard to the most dangerous defensive positions reflected his understanding that only the most elite forces could hope to stem the Tyranid advance. The intervention of the Sanguiner during the most critical moments of the siege provided a crucial morale boost to defending forces while demonstrating the mysterious nature of the Blood Angels' spiritual heritage. This golden-armored figure's appearance at key moments in the battle inspired nearby Space Marines to superhuman efforts while striking fear into attacking Tyranid forces. The Sanguiner's ability to appear wherever the fighting was most desperate helped maintain defensive cohesion during the darkest hours of the siege. The final phase of the devastation of Baal saw the deployment of Leviathan's most sophisticated bioforms in coordinated assaults designed to overwhelm the remaining defensive positions. These attacks demonstrated tactical complexity that exceeded anything previously observed in Tyranid operations, with multiple bioform types working in perfect coordination to exploit weaknesses in the Blood Angels' defensive lines. The appearance of specialized organisms designed specifically to counter Space Marine combat doctrine showed the extent of the Hive Mind's analytical capabilities. The arrival of the Indomitus Crusade forces under the command of Robute Guilliman provided crucial reinforcement for the beleaguered defenders of Baal. The Primarch's strategic genius and the fresh forces under his command helped turn the tide of battle, though the cost in Blood Angels' lives had been enormous. The intervention demonstrated the importance of coordinated Imperial responses to major Tyranid incursions and the crucial role that Primarch-level leadership could play in countering such threats. The aftermath of the devastation of Baal revealed both the resilience of the Blood Angels and the devastating effectiveness of Leviathan's assault capabilities. The chapter's losses numbered in the thousands, with entire companies eliminated and the fortress monastery suffering damage that would take decades to repair. The psychological impact of seeing their homeworld under assault created lasting trauma among the survivors, while the loss of ancient relics and historical artifacts represented irreplaceable cultural damage. The current status of Hive Fleet Leviathan's advance presents Imperial strategists with ongoing challenges that require constant adaptation and resource allocation across multiple sectors. The fleet's dispersed formation and multi-vector approach mean that Imperial forces must maintain defensive preparations across vast regions of space, while lacking the concentrated enemy formations that would allow for decisive engagement. The Tyranid's ability to coordinate operations across such distances while maintaining tactical flexibility at the local level demonstrates the sophisticated nature of their strategic planning. Imperial containment efforts against Leviathan have required the development of new tactical doctrines and organizational structures specifically designed for fighting a dispersed enemy that can adapt to conventional defensive measures. The establishment of rapid response forces capable of redeploying quickly between threatened sectors has become a priority, while the development of specialized anti-Tyranid equipment and ammunition continues to evolve in response to new bioform capabilities. The psychological strain on Imperial forces engaged in prolonged operations against adaptive enemies has necessitated new support systems and rotation policies. The ongoing nature of the Leviathan threat has forced Imperial military planners to accept that the campaign represents not a conventional war with defined objectives and endpoints, but a permanent state of conflict that requires sustained resource allocation and strategic planning. The Tyranids' ability to replenish their forces through consumption of defeated enemies and local biomass means that temporary victories provide only brief respites rather than permanent solutions. This reality has necessitated fundamental changes in Imperial military doctrine and resource allocation strategies. The coordination of anti-Leviathan operations across multiple sectors has revealed both the strengths and weaknesses of Imperial command structures. The Imperium's vast bureaucracy and complex chain of command create delays and inefficiencies that the rapidly adapting Tyranids can exploit, while the diversity of Imperial forces and their varied capabilities provide flexibility that can counter enemy adaptations. The balance between centralized strategic planning and local tactical autonomy remains a constant challenge for Imperial commanders fighting against an enemy that can adapt faster than traditional military hierarchies can respond. The intelligence gathered from ongoing operations against Leviathan continues to reveal new aspects of Tyranid capabilities and strategic thinking. The discovery of bioforms with enhanced stealth capabilities and specialized reconnaissance organisms suggests that the Hive Mind has developed sophisticated intelligence gathering networks that provide detailed information on Imperial defensive preparations. The appearance of creatures designed specifically to counter newly developed Imperial weapons and tactics demonstrates the speed and effectiveness of Tyranid adaptation processes. The long-term implications of the Leviathan campaign extend beyond immediate military concerns to encompass fundamental questions about the Imperium's ability to maintain its territorial integrity against an enemy that can adapt to any defensive measure. The Tyranids' apparent immunity to conventional strategic planning and their ability to coordinate operations across galactic distances suggest that traditional Imperial approaches to warfare may prove inadequate against such sophisticated biological engineering. The ongoing nature of the threat requires sustained commitment of resources and personnel that strains the Imperium's already overstretched military capabilities. The insidious nature of genestealer infiltration represents perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the Tyranid threat, operating not through overwhelming military force, but through the systematic corruption of human society from within. Unlike the obvious devastation wrought by Hive fleets, genestealer cults work across generations to undermine Imperial worlds, creating networks of hybrid conspirators whose loyalty belongs not to the Emperor, but to the approaching swarm. These cults represent the Tyranid species' most sophisticated approach to planetary conquest, combining biological manipulation with psychological warfare to create enemies that are indistinguishable from loyal Imperial citizens until the moment of revelation. The genostellar life cycle begins with the arrival of a single puristrain organism, typically delivered to a target world through various means of infiltration. These creatures may arrive as stowaways aboard merchant vessels, emerge from derelict space hulks that drift into inhabited systems, or be deliberately deployed by advanced elements of approaching hive fleets. The initial genostellar possesses all the stealth and infiltration capabilities that make its species so dangerous, combined with the reproductive imperative that drives the creation of hybrid offspring through the infection of human hosts. The infection process itself represents a horrifying violation of human biology, as the genostellar's ovipositor implants genetic material directly into the victim's reproductive system. This implantation does not immediately transform the host, but instead alters their genetic structure in ways that will affect their future offspring. The infected individual, known as a host, experiences subtle psychological changes that make them more susceptible to the genostellar's influence, while retaining enough of their original personality to avoid detection by Imperial authorities. The host's loyalty gradually shifts from the Emperor to the alien creature that has infected them, though this change occurs so gradually that even the individual themselves may not recognize the transformation. The first generation of hybrid offspring produced by infected hosts represents the beginning of the cult's expansion into human society. These creatures, designated as first-generation hybrids, display obvious alien characteristics that make them unsuitable for direct infiltration of Imperial institutions. Their elongated skulls, chitinous skin patches, and predatory instincts mark them as clearly inhuman, requiring them to remain hidden within the cult's underground networks. Despite their monstrous appearance, first-generation hybrids possess enhanced physical capabilities that make them formidable fighters, serving as the cult's primary military force during the early stages of development. The psychological conditioning of first-generation hybrids ensures their absolute loyalty to the cult's cause, while providing them with the intelligence necessary to understand their role in the larger plan. These creatures experience the same psychic connection to the genostellar patriarch that drives all cult members, receiving guidance and instruction through the synaptic network that binds the cult together. Their enhanced strength and resilience make them ideal for eliminating threats to the cult's secrecy, while their human-derived intelligence allows them to plan and execute complex operations that pure Tyranid bioforms might find challenging. Second-generation hybrids represent a crucial step in the cult's infiltration of human society, as their more human appearance allows them to move freely among Imperial citizens while retaining significant alien enhancements. These individuals display fewer obvious physical mutations than their first-generation predecessors, with their alien heritage manifesting primarily through subtle changes in bone structure, skin texture, and eye coloration. The reduced visibility of their mutations allows second-generation hybrids to assume roles within Imperial society that would be impossible for more obviously altered individuals. The capabilities of second-generation hybrids make them invaluable assets for cult operations, requiring direct interaction with uninfected humans. Their enhanced physical abilities provide them with significant advantages in combat situations, while their human appearance allows them to infiltrate Imperial Guard units, PDF forces, and civilian organizations without arousing suspicion. The psychological conditioning that ensures their loyalty to the cult operates alongside their inherited human emotions, creating individuals who can genuinely care for their human associates while simultaneously working toward their ultimate consumption by the Tyranid swarm. Third-generation hybrids achieve an even greater degree of human appearance, with their alien heritage becoming increasingly difficult to detect through casual observation. These individuals can pass for normal humans in most circumstances, with their mutations limited to subtle changes that might be attributed to genetic variation or environmental factors. The reduced visibility of their alien characteristics allows third-generation hybrids to assume positions of significant responsibility within Imperial society, including roles in planetary government, military command, and religious institutions. The integration of third-generation hybrids into Imperial society represents the cult's most sophisticated infiltration capability, as these individuals can influence policy decisions and resource allocation in ways that benefit the cult's long-term objectives. Their positions within the Imperial hierarchy provide them with access to classified information about planetary defenses, military deployments, and supply networks that proves invaluable when coordinating cult activities. The psychological conditioning that ensures their loyalty operates alongside their inherited human capacity for complex reasoning, creating individuals who can develop sophisticated strategies for advancing the cult's interests while maintaining their cover identities. Fourth-generation hybrids achieve virtually complete human appearance, with their alien heritage detectable only through the most sophisticated medical examinations or psychic probing. These individuals represent the culmination of the genestealer infection process, combining human appearance with the enhanced capabilities and absolute loyalty that characterize all cult members. Their ability to pass undetected among normal humans makes them ideal for the most sensitive infiltration missions, including the corruption of high-ranking Imperial officials and the establishment of cult cells in heavily monitored environments. The reproductive cycle of fourth-generation hybrids creates a unique situation within the cult's development, as their offspring represent a return to the pure-strain genestealer form that initiated the infection process. These newborn pure-strains possess all the capabilities of their original ancestor, while benefiting from the genetic diversity introduced through generations of human hybridization. The birth of new pure-strains marks the cult's readiness to expand beyond its original location, as these creatures can establish new infection cycles on different worlds or within different populations on the same planet. The genestealer patriarch serves as the apex of the cult's hierarchy, representing the ultimate evolution of the original pure-strain organism through decades or centuries of growth and development. This massive creature combines the stealth and infiltration capabilities of its species with enhanced psychic abilities that allow it to coordinate cult activities across entire planetary populations. The patriarch's enlarged cranium houses sophisticated neural structures that can process and transmit the complex psychic emanations necessary for maintaining control over thousands of hybrid followers. The physical presence of a genestealer patriarch reflects both its advanced age and its role as the cult's supreme leader. These creatures typically stand significantly taller than human height, with their muscular frames supporting forearms terminating in razor-sharp rending claws. The patriarch's chitinous carapace displays distinctive coloration patterns that vary according to the specific cult and environmental conditions, while specialized organs throughout its body produce the pheromones and psychic emanations that maintain cult cohesion. The creature's predatory instincts remain intact despite its leadership role, making it a formidable opponent in direct combat situations. The psychic capabilities of genestealer patriarchs operate on principles similar to those found in other Tyranid synaptic creatures, though adapted for the specific requirements of cult coordination and control. The patriarch's psychic influence extends throughout the cult's membership, providing guidance and instruction while monitoring the loyalty and effectiveness of individual members. This psychic network allows the patriarch to coordinate complex operations involving hundreds or thousands of cultists while maintaining the secrecy necessary for successful infiltration. The relationship between patriarchs and their cult members operates on multiple levels, combining direct psychic control with emotional manipulation that ensures absolute loyalty among the infected population. The patriarch's influence affects not only the conscious thoughts of cult members, but also their subconscious drives and emotional responses, creating individuals who genuinely believe in the righteousness of their cause while remaining completely devoted to their alien master. This psychological conditioning proves remarkably resistant to Imperial interrogation techniques and even psychic probing, as the affected individual's altered brain chemistry reinforces their loyalty at the neurological level. The Magus represents the cult's primary interface with Imperial society, serving as both spiritual leader and political coordinator for the infected population. These individuals, typically third or fourth generation hybrids, possess the human appearance necessary for public leadership roles while retaining the enhanced capabilities and absolute loyalty that characterize all cult members. The Magus combines genuine charisma with psychic enhancement abilities that allow them to influence uninfected humans and coordinate cult activities across wide geographic areas. The role of the Magus within cult operations extends beyond simple leadership to encompass the complex task of maintaining the cult's cover identity while advancing its infiltration objectives. These individuals must balance the need for secrecy with the requirement for growth, identifying potential targets for infection while avoiding detection by Imperial authorities. The Magus's ability to inspire loyalty among both cult members and uninfected humans makes them invaluable for recruiting new members and establishing the political networks necessary for successful planetary takeover. The psychic abilities of a Magus operate through a combination of inherited genestealer capabilities and learned techniques developed through years of practice and experimentation. These individuals can project localized psychic fields that enhance their natural charisma and persuasiveness, making them exceptionally effective at public speaking and political manipulation. The Magus's connection to the Patriarch provides them with access to the broader cult network, while allowing them to coordinate activities across multiple cells and geographic regions. The Primus serves as the cult's military commander, coordinating the armed forces that will emerge during the final stages of the infiltration process. These individuals, typically second or third generation hybrids, combine the enhanced physical capabilities of their alien heritage with the tactical knowledge necessary for coordinating complex military operations. The Primus's role becomes crucial during the transition from covert infiltration to open rebellion, as they must transform a network of hidden conspirators into an effective fighting force capable of supporting the arriving Tyranid swarm. The military capabilities of a Primus reflect both their hybrid nature and their specialized training in combat tactics and strategy. These individuals possess enhanced strength and reflexes that make them formidable fighters, while their human intelligence allows them to understand and exploit Imperial military doctrine. The Primus's connection to the cult's psychic network provides them with real-time intelligence on enemy movements and capabilities, allowing them to coordinate attacks with unprecedented precision and effectiveness. The relationship between the Primus and the cult's various hybrid generations creates a complex military hierarchy that can adapt to different operational requirements. First-generation hybrids serve as shock troops and assault specialists, while second- and third-generation hybrids provide the tactical flexibility necessary for complex operations. The Primus's ability to coordinate these diverse forces while maintaining operational security represents one of the cult's most significant military advantages. The organizational structure of genestealer cults reflects both their biological nature and their need for operational security within Imperial society. The cult operates through a cellular structure that limits the exposure of individual members while maintaining the coordination necessary for complex operations. Each cell typically consists of a small group of hybrids and infected humans who work together on specific objectives while remaining isolated from other cult activities. This compartmentalization ensures that the capture or elimination of individual cells does not compromise the broader cult network. The communication systems that connect different cult cells operate through a combination of conventional methods and psychic networks that allow for secure coordination across wide geographic areas. The psychic component of cult communication proves particularly difficult for Imperial authorities to detect or intercept, as the emanations operate on frequencies that standard monitoring equipment cannot access. The biological nature of these communication networks also makes them resistant to conventional jamming techniques, providing the cult with significant advantages in maintaining operational security. The recruitment process for new cult members combines biological infection with psychological manipulation techniques designed to ensure loyalty and effectiveness among the converted population. The cult identifies potential targets through careful observation of Imperial society, focusing on individuals whose positions or capabilities would benefit the cult's objectives. The recruitment process itself varies according to the target's circumstances, with some individuals being infected directly, while others are gradually drawn into the cult through social and political networks. The Day of Ascension represents the culmination of the cult's infiltration efforts, marking the moment when decades or centuries of preparation transform into open rebellion against Imperial authority. This coordinated uprising typically coincides with the arrival of the Tyranid Hive fleet that the cult has been preparing to support, creating a two-pronged assault that combines external military pressure with internal sabotage and rebellion. The timing of the Day of Ascension requires precise coordination between the cult's leadership and the approaching swarm, as premature action could result in the cult's destruction before the arrival of reinforcements. The preparation for the Day of Ascension involves months or years of careful planning and resource accumulation, as the cult must transform from a covert organization into an effective military force capable of supporting Tyranid operations. This transformation requires the stockpiling of weapons and supplies, the identification of key targets for initial assault, and the coordination of activities across multiple cult cells. The cult's infiltration of Imperial institutions provides them with detailed intelligence on defensive preparations and potential weaknesses that can be exploited during the uprising. The initial phase of the Day of Ascension typically focuses on sabotage operations designed to cripple Imperial response capabilities while creating chaos and confusion among the defending forces. Cult members embedded within Imperial Guard units, PDF forces, and civilian organizations launch coordinated attacks on communication centers, supply depots, and command facilities. The simultaneous nature of these attacks, combined with the cult's detailed knowledge of Imperial defensive plans, creates a level of disruption that conventional enemy forces could not achieve. The coordination between cult uprisings and Tyranid fleet arrivals demonstrates the sophisticated nature of the species' strategic planning capabilities. The timing of these operations requires precise calculation of fleet movements and travel times, as well as detailed knowledge of local conditions and Imperial response capabilities. The cult's ability to maintain communication with the approaching fleet through psychic networks allows for real-time coordination of activities, ensuring that the uprising provides maximum support for the Tyranid assault. The uprising on Gaunts Quintus provides a detailed example of how genostealer cults can undermine Imperial defenses through coordinated internal rebellion. The planet's strategic importance as a supply hub for Imperial forces in the surrounding sectors made it a crucial target for Tyranid infiltration, with the cult spending over a century establishing networks throughout the planet's industrial and military infrastructure. The cult's patient approach allowed them to achieve positions of significant influence within the planetary government and military command structure before revealing their true nature. The infiltration of Gaunts Quintus began with the arrival of a single Pura-strain genostealer aboard a merchant vessel, which established the initial infection cycle within the planet's main population center. The cult's growth proceeded slowly but steadily, with each generation of hybrids expanding the network of infected individuals while maintaining the secrecy necessary for long-term success. The cult's leadership demonstrated remarkable patience and strategic thinking, avoiding premature action while systematically identifying and eliminating potential threats to their operations. The cult's penetration of Gaunts Quintus's military forces proved particularly devastating to Imperial defensive capabilities, as infected officers provided detailed intelligence on defensive plans while sabotaging equipment and supply lines. The gradual corruption of the planetary defense force meant that Imperial authorities remained unaware of the threat until the moment of revelation, when supposedly loyal troops turned their weapons against their uninfected comrades. The psychological impact of this betrayal proved as devastating as the direct military effects, as surviving Imperial forces struggled to determine which of their allies could be trusted. The industrial sabotage conducted by cult members on Gossar Quintus demonstrated the sophisticated nature of their infiltration capabilities, as infected workers systematically undermined the planet's manufacturing capacity while maintaining the appearance of normal operations. The cult's detailed knowledge of Imperial supply chains allowed them to identify critical vulnerabilities that could be exploited to maximum effect, creating shortages of essential materials while stockpiling resources for their own use. The cumulative effect of these sabotage operations created a logistical crisis that severely hampered Imperial defensive preparations. The revelation of the cult's true nature on Gossar Quintus occurred during a carefully orchestrated uprising that coincided with the arrival of Tyranid bioships in the system's outer reaches. The simultaneous nature of internal rebellion and external assault created a crisis that overwhelmed Imperial response capabilities, as defending forces found themselves fighting enemies both within and without their defensive perimeters. The cult's detailed knowledge of Imperial defensive plans allowed them to coordinate their attacks with devastating precision, striking at the most vulnerable points while avoiding areas of concentrated resistance. The fall of Gossar Quintus to combined cult and Tyranid forces demonstrated the effectiveness of coordinated infiltration and assault tactics, as the planet's defenses collapsed within days of the uprising's beginning. The cult's systematic undermining of Imperial capabilities created vulnerabilities that the arriving Tyranid forces could exploit with maximum efficiency, while the internal rebellion prevented effective coordination of defensive efforts. The speed of the planet's fall shocked Imperial authorities throughout the sector, as a world that had appeared secure and loyal revealed itself to be thoroughly compromised by alien influence. The Stealers' War on Necromunda represents one of the most extensively documented examples of Genestealer cult activity within Imperial space, providing detailed insights into the species' infiltration capabilities and tactical approaches. The Hive world's unique social structure and environmental conditions created ideal circumstances for cult development, as the planet's Underhive provided numerous hiding places for infected populations, while the complex political relationships between different gangs and noble houses offered opportunities for manipulation and control. The initial infiltration of Necromunda occurred through multiple vectors, with Genestealer organisms arriving aboard various merchant vessels and establishing separate infection cycles within different areas of the planet's massive hive cities. The cult's development proceeded along different timelines in various locations, creating a complex network of related but semi-independent organizations that could support each other while maintaining operational security. The diversity of cult cells across the planet provided resilience against Imperial countermeasures, while allowing for different tactical approaches based on local conditions. The cult's integration into Necromunda's gang warfare culture provided them with natural cover for their activities, as the planet's endemic violence made it difficult for Imperial authorities to distinguish between normal criminal activity and cult operations. The infected gangs demonstrated enhanced combat capabilities that allowed them to expand their territorial control while eliminating rivals who might threaten cult security. The gradual expansion of cult influence through gang warfare created a power base that could support larger operations while maintaining the appearance of normal Underhive politics. The corruption of Necromunda's noble houses represented the cult's most sophisticated infiltration achievement, as infected individuals achieved positions of significant political and economic influence within the planet's ruling class. The cult's patient approach allowed them to establish networks within multiple noble houses simultaneously, creating a web of influence that could coordinate activities across different social strata. The infected nobles' access to resources and information proved invaluable for supporting cult operations while maintaining the secrecy necessary for long-term success. The industrial applications of cult infiltration on Necromunda demonstrated the species' ability to exploit human manufacturing capabilities for their own purposes, as infected workers systematically modified production processes to create equipment and supplies that would benefit cult operations. The cult's detailed knowledge of Imperial manufacturing standards allowed them to introduce subtle modifications that would not be detected by quality control procedures, while providing significant advantages during combat operations. The cumulative effect of these modifications created a substantial military advantage that became apparent only during the final stages of the conflict. The revelation of cult activity on Necromunda triggered a complex conflict that involved multiple factions and demonstrated the challenges of fighting an enemy that had thoroughly infiltrated local society. Imperial authorities struggled to distinguish between loyal citizens and cult members, while the infected population's detailed knowledge of local conditions provided them with significant tactical advantages. The urban warfare environment of the Hive cities favored defenders who understood the complex layout of tunnels and passages, while the cult's ability to coordinate activities across multiple levels of the Hive created unprecedented challenges for Imperial forces. The Magus cult on Astra Militarum recruitment, World Vigilis, demonstrated how genestealer infiltration could compromise Imperial military capabilities on a sector-wide scale, as infected recruits spread throughout the Imperial Guard carried the cult's influence to dozens of different worlds. The planet's role as a training center for new Imperial Guard regiments provided the cult with access to thousands of potential hosts, while offering opportunities to influence military doctrine and training procedures. The cult's patient approach allowed them to establish networks within the military hierarchy while avoiding detection by Imperial security services. The infiltration of Vigilis's training facilities began with the infection of key personnel within the planet's military establishment, including drill instructors, supply officers, and medical personnel who could influence large numbers of recruits while maintaining their cover identities. The cult's systematic approach to military infiltration focused on positions that would provide maximum influence over training procedures and resource allocation, while avoiding roles that would attract excessive scrutiny from Imperial authorities. The gradual expansion of cult influence within the military hierarchy created a network that could coordinate activities across multiple training facilities and administrative departments. The corruption of Imperial Guard training procedures on Vigilis represented a particularly insidious form of cult activity, as infected instructors systematically modified training programs to create vulnerabilities that could be exploited by Tyranid forces. These modifications were subtle enough to avoid detection by Imperial oversight procedures, while providing significant advantages to enemies who understood the altered tactics and procedures. The long-term implications of these modifications extended far beyond Vigilis itself, as corrupted training methods spread throughout the Imperial Guard regiments that received their initial instruction on the planet. The export of infected personnel from Vigilis to other worlds created a network of cult cells that could coordinate activities across multiple star systems while maintaining the appearance of normal Imperial Guard operations. The infected soldiers' access to military equipment and facilities provided them with resources that civilian cult cells could not obtain, while their training and discipline made them formidable opponents during combat operations. The gradual spread of cult influence through military channels created a threat that extended far beyond any single world or system. The discovery of cult activity on Vigilis triggered a massive Imperial response that involved multiple Space Marine chapters and Inquisition forces, demonstrating the seriousness with which Imperial authorities viewed the threat of military infiltration. The investigation revealed the extent of cult penetration within the Imperial Guard hierarchy, while exposing the sophisticated nature of their infiltration techniques. The purges that followed the discovery eliminated thousands of potentially infected personnel, while creating lasting suspicion about the reliability of Imperial Guard units trained on compromised worlds. The biological arsenal wielded by Tyranid organisms represents the pinnacle of evolutionary warfare, where every weapon system exists as a living entity capable of adaptation, growth, and independent function. These symbiotic weapon organisms blur the traditional boundaries between tool and creature, creating armaments that can modify their performance characteristics in real time while maintaining the organic flexibility that makes Tyranid forces so devastatingly effective. The fleshborer serves as the most ubiquitous example of this bioweapon integration, functioning as both projectile launcher and ammunition factory within a single organic system. The fleshborer's chitinous barrel houses a complex ecosystem of beetle-like organisms that serve as living ammunition, each projectile representing a miniature bioform engineered specifically for penetrating armor and flesh. These beetle rounds possess rudimentary nervous systems that allow them to adjust their flight path mid-trajectory, seeking out gaps in enemy armor or vulnerable points in defensive positions. The beetle's mandibles can chew through ceramic plating given sufficient time, while their acidic digestive systems begin breaking down target tissue immediately upon impact. The weapon's organic firing mechanism operates through muscular contractions that can regulate projectile velocity based on target distance and armor thickness, providing the wielding bioform with unprecedented tactical flexibility. The ammunition production cycle within fleshborer organisms operates continuously during combat, with specialized organs converting consumed biomass into new beetle rounds at rates that can exceed the weapon's firing capacity. The beetles themselves undergo rapid maturation within breeding chambers located throughout the weapon's organic structure, emerging as fully functional projectiles within minutes of their initial cellular formation. This biological manufacturing process ensures that Tyranid forces never suffer from ammunition shortages, as each weapon system can maintain sustained fire rates limited only by the availability of raw biological materials. Spinefists represent a more specialized variant of Tyranid bioweapon technology, optimized for rapid-fire engagements and area suppression tactics. These weapons launch crystalline spines that are grown within the creature's body, using specialized calcium processing organs, creating projectiles with armor-piercing capabilities that exceed conventional ammunition types. The spines themselves contain hollow chambers filled with neurotoxins that can incapacitate targets through even minor wounds, while their crystalline structure allows them to fragment upon impact to create multiple wound channels within the target's body. The targeting system integrated into Spinefist weapons operates through direct neural interface with the wielding bioform's sensory organs, allowing for accuracy levels that approach those of sophisticated electronic systems. The weapon can track multiple targets simultaneously while adjusting its firing pattern to account for enemy movement and defensive measures. The organic nature of the targeting system provides resistance to electronic countermeasures while allowing for rapid adaptation to new target types and combat environments. Deathspitters function as the heavy weapon's equivalent within the Tyranid bioweapon arsenal, launching large projectiles containing concentrated acid compounds that can dissolve armor and flesh with equal effectiveness. The weapon's enlarged firing chamber accommodates projectiles the size of human fists, each containing sufficient corrosive material to create man-sized holes in ferrocrete walls. The projectiles themselves are living organisms that can survive the launch process and continue their destructive work after impact, burrowing through defensive positions while leaving trails of dissolved material in their wake. The acid production systems within Deathspitter weapons operate through specialized glands that can modify the chemical composition of projectiles based on target analysis conducted by the wielding bioform's sensory organs. Projectiles designed for anti-armor work contain different acid mixtures than those intended for anti-personnel use, while specialized rounds can be produced for specific enemy types encountered during combat. The weapon's ability to analyze target composition and produce appropriate ammunition types in real time provides Tyranid forces with unprecedented tactical advantages against diverse enemy forces. Venom cannons represent the apex of Tyranid projectile weapon technology, combining massive projectile size with sophisticated biological targeting systems that can engage enemies at extreme ranges. These weapons launch living organisms the size of human torsos, each containing enough toxic material to eliminate entire squads of enemy troops. The projectiles possess limited flight capability through gas-filled chambers that allow them to adjust their trajectory during flight, while specialized sensory organs help them identify and track target signatures across battlefield distances. The toxin production systems within Venom Cannon projectiles operate through complex biological processes that can synthesize dozens of different poison types based on target analysis and tactical requirements. Neural toxins designed to incapacitate rather than kill work alongside necrotizing agents that can dissolve tissue at the molecular level, while specialized compounds can disrupt electronic systems and vehicle components. The projectile's ability to select appropriate toxin mixtures based on target type makes them effective against virtually any enemy force configuration. Barbed stranglers launch web-like organisms that continue growing after impact, creating expanding zones of difficult terrain that can channel enemy movement and create tactical advantages for advancing Tyranid forces. The launched organisms possess primitive nervous systems that allow them to distinguish between friendly and enemy forces, entangling hostile targets while allowing Tyranid bioforms to pass through unimpeded. The web material itself possesses remarkable tensile strength that can immobilize vehicles and heavy equipment, while specialized barbs inject paralytic toxins into any creature that becomes entangled. The growth patterns of strangler organisms can be modified through chemical signals transmitted by the launching weapon, allowing the wielding bioform to create specific web configurations optimized for different tactical situations. Dense webs designed for area denial work alongside channeling patterns that direct enemy movement toward predetermined kill zones, while specialized configurations can create temporary bridges or climbing aids for advancing Tyranid forces. The organism's ability to respond to tactical commands while maintaining their autonomous growth patterns provides unprecedented battlefield flexibility. Tyranid bioships represent the ultimate expression of living weapon technology, combining massive size with organic weapon systems that can adapt to any tactical situation. These vessels operate as self-contained ecosystems, capable of manufacturing ammunition, repairing damage, and modifying their weapon configurations based on enemy capabilities and defensive measures. The ship's hulls incorporate specialized organs that can analyze enemy fire patterns and develop appropriate countermeasures, while their weapon systems can evolve new attack modes during extended engagements. The pyro-acid batteries that serve as the primary armament for many bioships operate through specialized glands that can produce and launch massive quantities of corrosive compounds across void combat ranges. These weapons can adjust their acid composition based on target analysis, producing different chemical mixtures optimized for different enemy ship types and defensive systems. The batteries themselves can modify their firing patterns to account for enemy maneuvers and defensive measures, while their organic nature provides resistance to electronic countermeasures and jamming systems. The massive biocannons found on the largest Tyranid vessels launch projectiles that function as independent organisms capable of surviving void combat and continuing their mission after impact. These projectiles can range from swarms of smaller organisms designed for anti-fighter work to massive single entities capable of breaching capital ship armor. The cannon's ability to manufacture different projectile types during combat provides bioships with unprecedented tactical flexibility, allowing them to adapt their armament to changing battlefield conditions without requiring external resupply. The targeting systems integrated into bioship weapon arrays operate through distributed sensory networks that can track multiple targets simultaneously while coordinating fire patterns across different weapon types. These systems can analyze enemy ship configurations and identify optimal target points for different weapon systems, while their organic nature allows for rapid adaptation to new enemy types and defensive measures. The ship's ability to share targeting information through the Hive Mind psychic network creates coordinated fire patterns that can overwhelm enemy defensive systems through sheer volume and precision. Spore mines represent one of the most insidious weapons in the Tyranid arsenal, functioning as autonomous organisms that can float through space or atmosphere while seeking out enemy targets. These spherical creatures possess simple nervous systems that allow them to recognize and approach potential targets, while their gas-filled bodies provide the buoyancy necessary for extended deployment periods. The mind's ability to remain dormant for extended periods while maintaining their explosive capabilities makes them ideal for area denial and defensive operations. The explosive systems within spore mines operate through specialized organs that can detonate with tremendous force upon contact with enemy forces or in response to specific chemical signals. The explosion releases clouds of toxic spores that can incapacitate or kill enemy personnel across wide areas, while the blast itself can damage vehicles and equipment. The mine's ability to distinguish between friendly and enemy forces through chemical recognition prevents accidental detonation while ensuring maximum effectiveness against hostile targets. Mycetic spores serve as the primary delivery system for Tyranid ground forces, functioning as living drop pods that can survive atmospheric entry while protecting their cargo from enemy fire. These massive organisms possess heat-resistant carapaces that can withstand the thermal stress of atmospheric entry, while their internal chambers provide life support and protection for the bioforms they carry. The spore's ability to adjust their descent trajectory allows for precise deployment of forces at predetermined locations, while their organic nature provides resistance to enemy interception attempts. The guidance systems integrated into mycetic spores operate through sophisticated sensory organs that can analyze terrain conditions and enemy deployments during descent, allowing the spores to select optimal landing sites for their cargo. The spores can communicate with each other through chemical signals, coordinating their landings to achieve maximum tactical effect while avoiding enemy defensive positions. Their ability to function as temporary defensive positions after landing provides additional tactical value, as the spore's thick carapaces can serve as cover for deploying bioforms. The deployment capabilities of mycetic spores extend beyond simple troop transport to include specialized variants designed for specific tactical missions. Some spores carry specialized equipment or bioconstructs that can establish forward operating bases or communication relays, while others function as mobile weapon platforms that can provide fire support for deployed forces. The spore's ability to modify their internal configuration based on mission requirements provides unprecedented flexibility in force deployment and tactical planning. Tyranid bioweapons demonstrate remarkable evolutionary adaptation when confronted with Imperial armor and defensive systems, rapidly developing countermeasures that can neutralize previously effective protection methods. The species' encounter with Imperial power armor led to the development of specialized projectiles that could penetrate ceramite plating through focused acid attacks, while their exposure to void shields resulted in bioelectrical weapons that could disrupt energy barriers. The speed of these adaptations often catches Imperial forces off guard, as weapons that proved effective in early engagements become progressively less useful as Tyranid forces develop appropriate responses. The adaptation process operates through the Hive Mind's analysis of combat data gathered from individual engagements, with successful bioform modifications being rapidly disseminated throughout the swarm through genetic template updates. Bioforms that encounter new enemy equipment types transmit detailed information about their capabilities and weaknesses to the collective consciousness, which then develops appropriate countermeasures for deployment in subsequent encounters. This biological intelligence network ensures that lessons learned in one engagement can be applied across the entire swarm within hours or days of the initial contact. The development of armor-piercing bioweapons represents one of the most significant adaptations observed in Tyranid forces, as the species has created projectiles specifically designed to penetrate the various armor types used by Imperial forces. These specialized rounds incorporate diamond-hard cutting edges grown from crystallized calcium compounds, while their acid payloads have been modified to dissolve the specific alloys used in Imperial armor production. The projectile's ability to analyze target composition during flight allows them to select appropriate penetration methods based on the armor type encountered. The creation of anti-vehicle bioweapons demonstrates the Hive Mind's ability to develop countermeasures for even the most sophisticated Imperial military technology. These weapons launch organisms that can disable vehicle systems through targeted attacks on specific components, while their acid compounds have been optimized to dissolve the materials used in Imperial vehicle construction. The bioform's ability to identify and target critical vehicle systems such as engines, weapons, and communication equipment provides them with tactical advantages that conventional weapons cannot match. The evolution of psychic resistance in Tyranid bioweapons reflects the species' encounters with Imperial psychers and their defensive capabilities. Specialized projectiles have been developed that can maintain their targeting accuracy despite psychic interference, while their organic guidance systems provide resistance to mental influence and redirection attempts. The weapon's ability to function effectively in psychically active environments gives Tyranid forces significant advantages when fighting enemies that rely on warp-based abilities for their defensive measures. The centuries of conflict with successive Hive fleets have forged the Death Watch into the galaxy's premier anti-Tyranid force, with their specialized kill teams developing tactics and equipment specifically designed to counter the adaptive nature of bioform warfare. The Chamber Militant of the Ordo Xenos has accumulated more practical experience fighting Tyranid organisms than any other Imperial military organization, transforming hard-won battlefield knowledge into doctrine that can be disseminated throughout the Imperium's vast military apparatus. Their approach to Tyranid warfare emphasizes surgical precision over overwhelming force, recognizing that the aliens' adaptive capabilities make prolonged engagements increasingly disadvantageous to Imperial forces. Deathwatch kill teams operate under tactical doctrines that prioritize the rapid identification and elimination of synaptic creatures, understanding that disrupting the Hive Mind's command structure represents the most effective method for neutralizing Tyranid swarms. These specialized units train extensively in recognizing the distinctive cranial enlargements and behavioral patterns that mark synaptic organisms, developing the marksmanship skills necessary to eliminate these high-value targets under combat conditions. The tactical emphasis on decapitation strikes requires kill team members to maintain precise fire discipline while operating in environments where missed shots can result in rapid enemy adaptation to their weapons and tactics. The ammunition types developed specifically for Deathwatch anti-Tyranid operations represent decades of research into the biological vulnerabilities of various bioform classifications. Hellfire rounds contain specialized acid compounds that can dissolve chitinous armor while delivering toxins designed to disrupt Tyranid nervous systems. These projectiles incorporate time delay mechanisms that allow them to penetrate target carapaces before releasing their chemical payloads, maximizing damage to internal organ systems while minimizing the opportunity for adaptive responses. The round's effectiveness against different bioform types requires kill team members to maintain detailed knowledge of enemy biology and the specific ammunition types most effective against each target classification. Kraken bolts represent another specialized ammunition type designed to counter the enhanced armor configurations observed in evolved Tyranid bioforms. These projectiles feature diamond-hard penetrator cores surrounded by explosive charges that can breach even the thickest chitinous plating before detonating within the target's body cavity. The bolt's delayed fuse mechanisms ensure maximum internal damage, while their specialized construction materials resist the acid environments found within many Tyranid organisms. The ammunition's effectiveness against heavily armored targets like Carnifexes and Bio-Titans has made it a standard component of Deathwatch armories, though its complex manufacturing process limits availability to the most critical operations. Deathwatch doctrine emphasizes mobility and rapid redeployment as essential elements of successful anti-Tyranid operations, recognizing that static defensive positions become increasingly vulnerable as enemy forces adapt to their fire patterns and defensive measures. Kill teams train extensively in hit and run tactics that allow them to engage enemy forces briefly before withdrawing to new positions, preventing the Tyranids from developing effective countermeasures to their weapons and tactics. This approach requires exceptional coordination and discipline, as team members must maintain effective fire while conducting tactical withdrawals under pressure from pursuing bioforms. The psychological conditioning required for effective anti-Tyranid warfare extends beyond standard Space Marine mental preparation to include specific training designed to counter the horror and revulsion that characterizes encounters with Tyranid organisms. Deathwatch Battle Brothers undergo extensive exposure to captured bioform specimens and recorded battle footage, developing the mental resilience necessary to maintain combat effectiveness when facing enemies that violate fundamental assumptions about the nature of life and death. The training includes techniques for recognizing and countering the psychological effects of the shadow in the warp, as well as methods for maintaining unit cohesion when facing overwhelming numbers of adaptive enemies. The development of specialized equipment for anti-Tyranid operations has produced innovations that extend beyond simple weapons and ammunition to include detection systems, communication equipment, and protective gear optimized for biological warfare environments. Auspex units modified for Tyranid detection can identify the distinctive bioelectrical signatures generated by synaptic creatures, allowing kill teams to locate high-value targets within larger swarms. These devices incorporate filtering systems that can distinguish between different bioform types based on their electromagnetic emissions, providing tactical intelligence that proves crucial for target prioritization and engagement planning. Communication systems designed for operation within the shadow in the warp utilize hardened transmission protocols that can maintain functionality despite the psychic interference generated by large Tyranid forces. These systems employ multiple redundant channels and encryption methods that resist the disruptive effects of the Hive Mind's psychic emanations, ensuring that kill teams can maintain coordination even when operating in heavily contested areas. The equipment's resistance to biological contamination makes it suitable for extended operations in environments where Tyranid spores and other organic hazards pose constant threats to electronic systems. The Ordo Xenos maintains a comprehensive intelligence network dedicated to monitoring Tyranid activity across the galaxy, coordinating information gathering efforts that span multiple sectors and involve cooperation with various Imperial military organizations. This network operates through a combination of conventional reconnaissance assets and specialized monitoring stations positioned along the galaxy's periphery, providing early warning of approaching Hive fleet movements while tracking the activities of existing Tyranid forces. The intelligence gathered through these operations informs strategic planning efforts and resource allocation decisions that affect the Imperium's overall response to the Tyranid threat. Inquisitor Kryptman's contributions to anti-Tyranid intelligence operations established many of the protocols and procedures that continue to guide Ordo Xenos' activities decades after his controversial decisions regarding the Octarius War. His systematic approach to cataloging bioform capabilities and behavioral patterns created databases that remain essential resources for Imperial forces engaging Tyranid enemies. The classification systems developed under his direction provide standardized terminology and threat assessments that enable effective communication between different Imperial military organizations, ensuring that tactical intelligence gathered in one sector can be effectively utilized by forces operating in distant regions. The establishment of monitoring stations along predicted Hive fleet approach vectors represents one of the most significant investments in anti-Tyranid early warning capabilities undertaken by the Imperium. These heavily fortified installations combine long-range auger arrays with specialized detection equipment designed to identify the distinctive signatures generated by bioship formations. The stations operate under strict communication protocols that require regular status reports and immediate notification of any unusual readings, ensuring that Imperial authorities receive timely warning of approaching threats while maintaining the security necessary to prevent Tyranid infiltration of the monitoring network. The coordination of Imperial responses to new Hive fleet incursions requires complex logistical planning that must account for the vast distances involved and the unpredictable nature of Tyranid assault patterns. The Ordo Xenos maintains detailed contingency plans for various threat scenarios, including protocols for rapid military deployment and resource allocation that can be implemented when new Hive fleets are detected. These plans incorporate lessons learned from previous encounters while remaining flexible enough to adapt to the evolving nature of the Tyranid threat and the diverse capabilities demonstrated by different Hive fleets. The intelligence analysis capabilities developed by the Ordo Xenos extend beyond simple threat assessment to include predictive modeling that attempts to anticipate future Tyranid developments and strategic objectives. These efforts utilize sophisticated analytical techniques that combine biological research with tactical intelligence to identify patterns in Hive fleet behavior and bioform evolution. The analysis includes assessments of potential target worlds based on their strategic value and defensive capabilities, as well as predictions of likely Tyranid responses to various Imperial countermeasures and defensive strategies. The theoretical assessments of the main Tyranid fleet still approaching from beyond the galactic rim represent one of the most disturbing aspects of the current strategic situation facing the Imperium. Long-range detection systems positioned at the galaxy's edge continue to register massive bioship formations that dwarf even Hive fleet Leviathan in scope and scale, suggesting that the previous incursions represent merely the advance elements of a much larger force. The implications of these readings have forced Imperial strategists to confront the possibility that the Tyranid species possesses resources and capabilities that exceed their most pessimistic projections. The scale of the approaching main fleet challenges fundamental assumptions about the nature of the Tyranid threat and the Imperium's ability to mount effective resistance against such overwhelming force. Intelligence estimates suggest that the main fleet contains bioship formations numbering in the hundreds of thousands, with individual vessels displaying characteristics that exceed those of previously encountered Tyranid forces. The fleet's apparent coordination across such vast distances demonstrates the sophisticated nature of the Hive Mind's strategic planning capabilities, while raising questions about the collective consciousness's ultimate objectives and the scope of its resource base. The timeline projections for the main fleet's arrival vary significantly based on different analytical models and assumptions about Tyranid travel capabilities, but most estimates place the encounter within the next several centuries. This timeframe provides the Imperium with opportunities to prepare defensive measures and develop new countermeasures, while simultaneously creating pressure for immediate action to strengthen existing defenses and develop new military capabilities. The uncertainty surrounding the fleet's exact composition and capabilities complicates planning efforts, as Imperial forces must prepare for threats that may exceed their current understanding of Tyranid biology and tactics. The strategic implications of facing a Tyranid force of such magnitude extend beyond simple military considerations to encompass fundamental questions about the Imperium's survival and the future of human civilization in the galaxy. The resource requirements for mounting effective resistance against the main fleet would strain the Imperium's already overstretched military capabilities, potentially requiring the abandonment of entire sectors to concentrate forces for decisive battles. The psychological impact of confronting such an overwhelming threat poses additional challenges, as Imperial forces must maintain morale and combat effectiveness while preparing for what may represent humanity's ultimate test of survival. The potential consumption of entire sectors by the approaching main fleet represents a catastrophic scenario that would fundamentally alter the balance of power within the galaxy. The loss of major industrial centers and population centers would cripple the Imperium's ability to maintain its military forces and administrative apparatus, while the biomass gained by the Tyranids would fuel further expansion and evolution of their capabilities. The cascading effects of such losses would create vulnerabilities that other enemies of humanity could exploit, potentially leading to the collapse of Imperial authority across vast regions of space. The adaptive capabilities demonstrated by successive Hive fleets continue to evolve at rates that challenge Imperial military doctrine and force constant revision of anti-Tyranid strategies. Each new encounter reveals bioforms with enhanced capabilities and resistance to previously effective countermeasures, suggesting that the Hive Mind's analytical capabilities allow it to develop solutions to virtually any defensive measure given sufficient time and resources. The speed of these adaptations has accelerated with each successive Hive fleet, indicating that the collective consciousness is becoming increasingly efficient at processing tactical information and implementing biological modifications. The implications of continued Tyranid evolution extend beyond immediate tactical concerns to encompass strategic questions about the long-term viability of any defensive measures against such adaptive enemies. The species' ability to incorporate genetic material from consumed organisms provides them with access to an ever-expanding database of biological innovations, while their sophisticated understanding of biological engineering allows them to combine these elements in ways that create entirely new capabilities. The potential for Tyranid forces to develop countermeasures to even the most advanced Imperial technology raises fundamental questions about the effectiveness of technological solutions to biological threats. The development of bioforms specifically designed to counter Imperial military doctrine represents one of the most concerning aspects of Tyranid evolution, as it suggests that the Hive Mind possesses detailed knowledge of human tactical preferences and organizational structures. The appearance of creatures optimized for fighting space marines, Imperial Guard formations, and Imperial Navy vessels indicates that the Tyranids have analyzed Imperial military capabilities and developed targeted responses to specific force types. This level of tactical sophistication suggests that future encounters will involve enemies that have been specifically engineered to counter known Imperial strengths while exploiting identified weaknesses. The potential for Tyranid forces to develop resistance to the Emperor's psychic influence represents a theoretical threat that could fundamentally alter the nature of Imperial resistance efforts. While no bioforms have yet demonstrated immunity to the divine power that protects humanity, the species' adaptive capabilities and their sophisticated understanding of psychic phenomena suggest that such developments remain within the realm of possibility. The implications of facing Tyranid forces that could operate without fear of the Emperor's wrath would require fundamental changes in Imperial military doctrine and strategic planning. The consumption of entire sectors by evolved Tyranid forces represents a strategic nightmare scenario that would provide the aliens with unprecedented resources while simultaneously weakening Imperial defensive capabilities. The biomass gained from consuming billions of humans would fuel rapid expansion of Tyranid forces, while the genetic material obtained from such diverse populations would provide new evolutionary pathways for bioform development. The loss of major industrial centers would cripple the Imperium's ability to produce the weapons and equipment necessary for continued resistance, creating a downward spiral that could lead to complete Imperial collapse. The psychological warfare implications of facing increasingly sophisticated Tyranid forces cannot be understated, as Imperial troops struggle to maintain morale when confronting enemies that seem to learn from every engagement. The knowledge that weapons and tactics that proved effective in previous battles may be useless in subsequent encounters creates a sense of futility that can prove as devastating as direct military losses. The development of new training programs and psychological support systems has become essential for maintaining Imperial military effectiveness, though the long-term sustainability of such measures remains questionable given the relentless nature of the Tyranid threat. The coordination required for effective resistance against evolved Tyranid forces demands unprecedented levels of cooperation between different Imperial military organizations and civilian authorities. The traditional rivalries and jurisdictional disputes that characterize Imperial administration become potentially fatal weaknesses when facing enemies that can exploit any lack of coordination or communication. The development of unified command structures and standardized procedures represents a significant challenge for an organization as vast and bureaucratic as the Imperium, though the alternative of continued fragmentation could prove catastrophic. The resource allocation decisions required for long-term resistance against the Tyranid threat forced difficult choices between immediate defensive needs and long-term strategic objectives. The massive military expenditures required for anti-Tyranid operations strain the Imperium's already overstretched economy while reducing resources available for other essential functions. The balance between maintaining existing defensive capabilities and developing new countermeasures requires careful planning and coordination that must account for the uncertain timeline of future Tyranid incursions. The technological development efforts focused on anti-Tyranid warfare represent one of the few areas where Imperial innovation continues to advance at significant rates, driven by the immediate necessity of countering adaptive biological threats. The creation of new weapon systems, detection equipment, and defensive measures specifically designed for fighting Tyranid forces has produced innovations that benefit Imperial military capabilities more broadly. However, the resource requirements for such development efforts compete with other essential needs, while the uncertain effectiveness of new technologies against adaptive enemies creates risks that must be carefully managed. The ultimate fate of humanity in the face of the approaching Tyranid main fleet remains uncertain, dependent on factors that include the Imperium's ability to develop effective countermeasures, the potential for assistance from other galactic powers, and the possibility of discovering fundamental weaknesses in Tyranid biology or psychology. The species' apparent immunity to conventional military solutions suggests that victory, if possible, will require innovations that transcend current understanding of warfare and biology. The approaching confrontation represents not merely another military campaign, but potentially the ultimate test of human survival in a galaxy that has become increasingly hostile to their continued existence. The Tyranid threat has fundamentally altered the strategic landscape of the 41st millennium, transforming the Imperium from a conquering force into a civilization fighting for its very survival. The Great Devourer's relentless advance continues to consume worlds and civilizations, growing stronger with each victory, while adapting to overcome every defensive measure humanity can devise. As the shadow of the approaching main fleet grows ever larger, the Imperium faces its greatest challenge since the dark days of the Horus Heresy, with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance against an enemy that views them not as opponents to be defeated, but as resources to be consumed in the endless hunger that drives the swarm across the stars.